Every sound hides a secret. Every echo whispers a lie. Dare to listen. The truth waits in the dark. Prologue. September 14th. 2023. The recording lasted 17 seconds. I've listened to it 463 times now, and I still can't explain the sound that comes in the final 3 seconds. The wet, tearing noise that might be fabric or might be something else entirely. But it's the voice that keeps me awake. The voice that speaks my name, Ethan. Just that. Nothing more. A whisper caught on equipment that hadn't been powered on in 50 years, emanating from a facility that was supposed to be empty, echoing through hallways where 37 people vanished in a single night and were never found. The voice is mine. I know this now, though I didn't want to believe it at first. I told myself the audio was corrupted, that the static had warped it into something familiar. But I've been a clinical psychologist for 15 years. I know the sound of my own voice, even when it's reduced to a whisper, even when it's threaded through with something that sounds like fear, or perhaps recognition. The recording was discovered by a Forest Service ranger doing a routine perimeter check of the old research facility 3 months ago. He shouldn't have been able to get inside. The place had been sealed since 1973. But 50 years of weather and neglect had created gaps. The ranger heard what he described as singing, coming from inside the building. When he investigated, he found an old reel-to-reel recorder in what used to be the main observation lab. It was running. The tape had looped thousands of times, wearing thin in places, but the voice remained clear enough. Ethan, then that sound, then silence. Then it would begin again. The ranger, God bless him, had the presence of mind to stop the machine and preserve the tape before reporting what he'd found. His report made its way up the chain, Forest Service to Department of the Interior to Homeland Security, to whatever shadowy branch of the government still keeps files on projects like the Hollows Institute. And somehow, because the universe has a sick sense of humor, that report ended up on a desk in front of someone who knew that Dr. Ethan Ward had submitted an application to join an investigative team being assembled for the site. They called me 4 days ago, Dr. Ward, the woman on the phone had said. Her voice was professionally neutral, the kind of tone that comes from years of delivering information that people don't want to hear. This is Deputy Director Sarah Vance, with the Department of Energy's Office of Legacy Management. I'm calling about your application to join the Black Hollow assessment team. I'd been in my kitchen, staring at the bottle of pills I'd been prescribed after Claire died. Clonazepam, 0.5 milligrams. Take 1 tablet twice daily as needed for anxiety. I'd been needing them a lot lately. I didn't expect to hear back so quickly, I'd said. Circumstances have changed. We need to ask you something before we proceed. Have you ever been to the Black Hollow site? Either the facility itself or the surrounding area? No, never. Have you ever participated in any studies or programs related to the Hollows Institute? I've barely heard of it outside of what was in the application materials. Consciousness research, early 70s, mysteriously shut down. That's about the extent of my knowledge. There was a pause. I heard papers shuffling, the click of a mouse. Dr. Ward, I'm going to send you an audio file. I need you to listen to it and call me back within the hour. The number I'm calling from is secure. Don't discuss this with anyone else. The file had arrived in my email 60 seconds later. 17 seconds that have since carved themselves into my brain like a mantra. Ethan, that wet tearing sound. Silence. I'd called her back in 4 minutes. When do I leave? I'd asked. Now 72 hours later, I'm in a Department of Energy SUV winding through the mountains of Washington State, watching the late summer light fade behind the peaks of the Cascades. My team is in the vehicle ahead of me. 4 people I've never met. 4 specialists who've been told even less than I have about why we're really here. Officially, we are conducting a structural and environmental assessment of the site to determine if it can be safely dismantled. Unofficially, well, I'm not sure what we're doing unofficially. Deputy Director Vance had been clear that the recording was classified, that I was not to mention it to the others unless circumstances warranted. She'd also been clear that I'd been selected not just for my background in trauma psychology, but because of my recent personal experience with loss. Claire had been dead for 11 months. Car accident, drunk driver. She was 34 years old and had been on her way home from the grocery store. The other driver walked away with a broken arm. We believe you may have insights that will be valuable, Vance had said carefully. The nature of the research conducted at Black Hollow dealt with consciousness, memory, and the boundaries between psychological and physical phenomena. Your expertise, combined with your recent experiences, makes you uniquely qualified. Translation: They thought my dead wife made me the perfect candidate to investigate a place where people's consciousness had allegedly been recorded and trapped. The funny thing is, they weren't wrong. The SUV ahead of me taps its brake lights as we round another curve. Through my windshield, I can see the sign that marks the boundary of the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. Beyond that, another 20 miles of increasingly rough road, and then we'll reach the perimeter of what used to be called the Black Hollow Research Zone. The radio crackles. Dr. Ward, this is Carlson. How are you holding up back there? Thomas Carlson, former Army Corps of Engineers, now a structural safety consultant, our team leader, at least on paper, mid-40s, competent demeanor, the kind of man who probably thinks leadership means making everyone follow a checklist. I pick up the radio. Fine, how much longer? Another 40 minutes to the waypoint, then we hike in the last mile and a half. The old access road is completely overgrown. Copy that. I set the radio down and glance at the file folder on my passenger seat. Inside are dossiers on my 4 teammates. I've already memorized them. Thomas Carlson, Structural Engineering and Safety Assessment. Prior military, divorced, no children. Competent but unimaginative. Dr. Maya Okonkwo, Environmental Science, specializing in ecological remediation. Nigerian-British, early 30s. Published extensively on the long-term effects of abandoned research facilities. Brilliant, skeptical, probably the most rational person who'll be on site. James Jimmy Delacroix, Electronic Systems Specialist. Cajun accent, easy smile in his file photo, background in recovering data from obsolete technology. Former NSA, though his file doesn't specify what he did there. That makes him interesting. Rebecca Cross, the wild card. Her official title is Historical Documentation Specialist, but her background includes stints with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit and 3 years with something called the Anomalous Phenomena Research Division before it was quietly dissolved in 2019. She's the one who worries me. People don't get assigned to teams like this unless someone thinks there's going to be something. Anomalous to research, and then there's me, Dr. Ethan, Ward's psychologist, widower, the man whose voice was recorded in a building he's never been to, speaking on a tape that was made God knows when. The trees are getting thicker now, pressing in on both sides of the road. Douglas fir and western hemlock, their branches creating a canopy that turns the late afternoon into premature twilight. This is old-growth forest, the kind that existed before humans decided to catalog and tame everything. The kind where you can still get lost and never be found. Somewhere ahead, buried in these mountains, is the Hollows Institute, and somehow I'm already there. My phone buzzes. 1 bar of signal, fading fast. A text from my brother. Call me when you can. Just want to make sure you're okay. David has been checking on me constantly since Claire died. Part of me appreciates it. Part of me wants to throw the phone out the window. I type back, I'm fine. We'll call in a few days. Working. I don't mention where I'm working or what I'm doing. The NDA I signed was 30 pages long and came with criminal penalties. The signal dies as I hit send. I don't know if the message went through. The road narrows. The pavement, already cracked and weathered, gives way to gravel. Tree branches scrape against the sides of my vehicle. Through the window, I can see fog beginning to gather in the low places, pooling between the trees like something liquid. Another 10 minutes pass. The radio crackles again. This is it, Carlson says. Waypoint reached. Let's park and gear up. The SUV ahead pulls into a small clearing that looks like it might have once been an official parking area. Now it's just a wide spot where the trees thin out slightly. I pull in behind them and kill the engine. The silence is immediate and oppressive. I sit for a moment, hands still on the steering wheel, and listen to the nothing. No birds. No insects, no wind. Just the ticking of my cooling engine, and somewhere in the distance, something that might be water running over rocks. The others are already out of their vehicle, pulling equipment from the back. I watch them through my windshield. Carlson moving with military efficiency, Maya checking something on a handheld device, Jimmy laughing at something Rebecca said. They look normal. Like people on a camping trip. Like this is just another job. None of them have heard the recording. None of them know that we're walking into a place where time might not work the way it should. I open my tool. Idor and step out into the cold mountain air. The smell hits me immediately. Pine sap, damp earth, and underneath it all something else. Something that reminds me of the basement of the hospital where Claire was pronounced dead. That peculiar scent of places where bad things have happened, where the air itself seems to remember. Dr. Ward. Rebecca Cross waves me over. She's smaller than I expected from her file photo, maybe 5'4", with dark hair pulled back in a practical braid. We're just doing a final gear check before we head in. Should be about 30 pounds of equipment each. Can you handle that? I'll manage. She studies me for a moment with eyes that are too knowing. You look like you've seen a ghost. The words hit harder than she could know. I force a smile. Just not used to being this far from civilization. Get used to it. Carlson joins us, adjusting the straps on his pack. We're hiking in tonight, setting up base camp in the old administrative building, then starting the assessment tomorrow morning. Weather's supposed to hold for the next 5 days, which is how long we're scheduled to be on site. And if we need to stay longer? Maya asks, walking over with her own pack already secured. Then we get authorization from Vance and resupply. But let's plan on 5 days. That should be enough time to do preliminary structural assessment, document the interior spaces, and retrieve any remaining equipment or records that might be historically significant. He looks at each of us in turn. Everyone clear on the safety protocols? We nod. We'd spent yesterday in Seattle going over procedures. Buddy system. Check-ins every 4 hours via radio. Nobody goes into any area that hasn't been structurally assessed. If anyone experiences any unusual symptoms, dizziness, disorientation, auditory or visual hallucinations, they're to report it immediately and be pulled from the site. That last one had struck me as oddly specific. All right then. Carlson shoulders his pack. Let's move out. Stay in sight of the person in front of you. The trail's marked. But 50 years is a long time. We form a loose line and enter the forest. The trail, such as it is barely visible. Just a slight depression in the forest floor, where decades of overgrowth have tried and mostly succeeded in reclaiming the path. Carlson leads, followed by Maya, then Rebecca, then me, with Jimmy bringing up the rear. Every 50 feet or so we pass an old trail marker, a faded red slash on a tree trunk, the paint cracked and peeling. The fog thickens as we go deeper. It doesn't roll or drift. It just is. A grey presence that muffles sound and reduces visibility to about 20 feet. The temperature drops. I can see my breath, no one speaks. There's something about this place that discourages conversation. We walk in silence, our footsteps soft on the carpet of pine needles. The only other sound, the occasional crack of a branch or the drip of moisture from the trees. After what feels like an hour but is probably only 30 minutes, Jimmy breaks the silence. Y'all feel that? His voice carries a forced casualness that doesn't quite mask the unease underneath. Feel what? Maya asks without turning around. Like pressure in your ears. Like we're descending, but we're not. I do feel it, a subtle compression, like the air itself is getting denser. And something else, a low vibration, more sensed than heard, like standing too close to a bass speaker. It's just the elevation change, Carlson says, but he doesn't sound convinced. We keep walking. The trail dips into a small ravine and then climbs up the other side. At the top, Carlson stops so abruptly that Maya almost walks into him. There, he says, pointing. Through the fog I can make out shapes, artificial structures. The first buildings of the Hollows Institute. From this distance they look almost ordinary, low bunker-like structures made of poured concrete, weathered grey and covered in moss. But there's something wrong about their proportions, something that makes my eyes want to slide away from looking at them directly. Jesus, Rebecca breathes. It's bigger than I thought. She's right. The facility sprawls across what must be several acres, a complex of interconnected buildings arranged in a pattern that makes no immediate sense. Some structures are partially buried in the hillside. Others seem to grow out of the ground itself. And in the center, rising above everything else, is the main research building, a brutalist tower of concrete and steel, its windows dark and hollow. According to the plans, Carlson says, pulling out a weathered map, the administrative building should be that smaller structure on the east side. That's where we'll set up camp. The main research building is off limits until we've done structural assessment. We approach slowly, and with each step, the wrongness of the place becomes more apparent. The buildings seem to shift in the fog, their angles not quite aligning correctly. Shadows pool in places where there shouldn't be shadows. And that vibration I felt on the trail. It's stronger here, thrumming up through the ground and into my bones. The administrative building's door hangs open, one hinge broken, the other barely holding. Carlson takes out a flashlight and shines it inside. "Stay here," he says. "Let me make sure it's structurally sound." He disappears inside. We wait, huddled together against the cold and the fog and the growing sense that we are very much not welcome here. 3 minutes pass. Then 5. "Carlson," Maya calls out. "You okay in there?" No response. "Tom." She moves toward the door, but Rebecca catches her arm. "Give him another minute. Maybe the radio's not working inside." We wait. The fog presses closer. In the distance, from somewhere deep in the facility, I hear a sound. It might be wind moving through empty corridors. It might be pipes settling. Or it might be something else entirely. It sounds like singing. Finally, Carlson emerges. His face is pale, and there's something in his expression that wasn't there before. A tightness around his eyes, a way of not quite looking at any of us directly. "It's stable enough," he says. His voice sounds strange, hollow. "We can use it. Let's get set up before it gets full dark." "Are you all right?" I ask. He looks at me, then really looks at me, and for just a second, I see something flicker across his face. Fear, recognition, but then it's gone, buried under professional competence. Fine, just cold. "Let's move." We file into the building, our flashlights cutting narrow beams through the darkness. The interior smells of mildew and decay, but underneath that there's another scent. That same wrong smell from outside, stronger now. The smell of places where the rules don't quite apply. The main room is large, maybe 40 by 60 feet, with a high ceiling and remnants of old furniture pushed against the walls. Desks, filing cabinets, chairs with cracked vinyl seats. Everything is covered in a thick layer of dust except, "Look at this," Jimmy says, crouching near what used to be a desk. We gather around. The dust on the desk has been disturbed. Not recently. There's a thin layer of new dust over the marks, but someone or something has touched this surface within the last few years. The pattern is clear. 5 marks, like fingers, dragged across the surface. Forest Service Ranger, Maya says. Has to be. When he found the recording. Yeah, Jimmy agrees, but he doesn't sound convinced. Has to be. We set up our camp in silence. Sleeping bags arranged in a rough circle, camping stoves for heat and cooking, equipment stations for our various specialties. By the time we're done, full dark has fallen outside and the temperature has dropped below freezing. Carlson breaks out the duty roster. "We'll do 4-hour watches. Just in case. I'll take first watch with Ward. Maya and Rebecca, you've got midnight to 4. Jimmy, you've got solo from 4 to 8. But wake someone if you need to." "In case of what?" Maya asks. "Bears. In case of anything." Carlson's tone makes it clear the discussion is over. We eat a cold dinner of energy bars and trail mix. No one talks much. The only sound is the wind outside, moaning through the empty buildings like something in pain. And underneath that, so quiet I almost convince myself I'm imagining it, is that low vibration. A frequency just below hearing but felt nonetheless. Thrum, 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 like a heartbeat, like a recording looping endlessly in an empty room. At 11 o'clock, the others begin settling into their sleeping bags. Jimmy tells a half-hearted joke about horror movies that no one laughs at. Maya checks her air quality monitors one more time. Rebecca sits cross-legged on her sleeping bag, writing in a journal by flashlight. I sit near the door with Carlson, both of us ostensibly on watch, though I'm not sure what we're watching for. Through the broken door, I can see fog drifting past, illuminated by our battery-powered lamp. It moves like smoke, curling and coiling in patterns that seem almost purposeful. "Can I ask you something?" Carlson says quietly, after the others have fallen asleep. "Sure. Why did you really apply for this assignment?" I consider lying. I consider telling him the official story, that I wanted to get away from Seattle, that I needed the money, that I thought the experience would be professionally valuable. Instead, I find myself telling a version of the truth. My wife died last year. I've been looking for something. I'm not sure what. But when I saw the posting for this team, something about it felt right. Like maybe there were answers here. Answers to what? I don't know yet. Carlson is quiet for a long moment. Then I heard something. When I was in here alone checking the structure, I didn't want to say anything in front of the others, but I heard someone say my name. Just once, clear as day. Thomas. But there was no one else here. My blood runs cold. Here was the voice coming from. That's the thing. It wasn't coming from anywhere. It was just there, in the air, in my head. I don't know. He laughs, but there's no humor in it. I'm not a superstitious man, Dr. Ward. I've been in plenty of abandoned buildings. But this place... He trails off, shaking his head. Before I can respond, something changes in the air. The vibration that's been constant since we arrived suddenly stops. The silence that follows is absolute, suffocating. And then, from somewhere deep in the facility, we hear it. Ethan. The voice is mine, but it's not coming from me. Hers distant, echoing, filtered through layers of concrete and steel and time. Ethan. Carlson's flashlight beam swings wildly toward the door, toward the darkness beyond. What the hell was that? Thomas. Now it's his name spoken in his own voice, coming from the same impossible distance. Maya, Rebecca, James, all of their names, each in their own voice, calling out from the depths of the Hollows Institute. In their sleeping bags, the others begin to stir. Rebecca sits up, her face pale in the lamplight. Did you hear? She starts to say. Ethan. This time it's not distant. It's close, right outside the door. A scream in my own voice, but twisted. Desperate, terrified. And underneath it, getting louder, that wet tearing sound I've listened to 463 times. The building begins to vibrate. Dust rains down from the ceiling, and somewhere in the darkness, something that sounds like singing begins to echo through the halls. A chorus of voices, dozens of them, maybe more, all calling out names like a litany of the lost. This is how it begins. This is how we learn that the Hollows Institute never truly shut down, that the experiment never ended, that we haven't come here to investigate the past. We've come here to join it. First signs. The singing stopped as suddenly as it began. The silence that followed was somehow worse, a vacuum of sound so complete that I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, could hear the rasp of 4 other people breathing in the darkness, could hear the microscopic patter of dust settling on the concrete floor. Everyone stay calm, Carlson said, but his voice cracked on the last word. Betraying him. Maya had scrambled out of her sleeping bag and was now pressed against the far wall, her headlamp casting wild shadows. Jimmy stood near the center of the room, a tire iron gripped in both hands like a weapon. Rebecca remained on her sleeping bag, but she'd pulled a small handgun from somewhere, I hadn't known any of us were armed, and held it with the easy familiarity of someone who knew how to use it. That was our voices, Maya said. Her accent, usually barely noticeable, had thickened with fear. That was us. Our actual voices. Audio playback, Jimmy offered, but even he sounded unconvinced. Maybe there's some kind of automated system still running. Maybe it recorded us when we were setting up camp and played it back through speakers we haven't seen in a building with no power. Rebecca's gun remained trained on the doorway. That's your theory? You have a better one. Yes, we leave. Right now. We pack our shit and we hike back to the vehicles and we call this in and let someone else deal with whatever the hell this is. We can't, Carlson said quietly. Excuse me? We can't leave, not yet. We need authorization from Vance, and we're supposed to maintain radio silence unless there's an emergency situation. If we abandon the site without proper justification, Rebecca's voice climbed an octave. We just heard our own voices calling out from a building that's been sealed for 50 years. How is that not an emergency? Because, Carlson said with forced patience, we don't know what we heard. Could have been an echo. Could have been our imagination amplified by nerves. Could have been... It was real. My own voice surprised me. All 4 of them turned to look at me. I know it was real because I've heard it before. The words hung in the air between us. I hadn't meant to say them. Hadn't meant to reveal what I knew, but the moment felt too raw for lies. What do you mean you've heard it before? Maya asked carefully, so I told them. About the recording. About the ranger who'd found the reel-to-reel machine running. about the voice whispering my name, about the fact that I'd never been to this facility, but somehow my voice had been recorded here, speaking from some impossible when or where. When I finished, no one spoke for a long moment. Jimmy had lowered the tire iron. Rebecca's gun now pointed at the floor. Maya had slid down the wall into a sitting position, her head in her hands. "Jesus Christ," Carlson finally said. "You knew about this before we came here?" "You knew and you didn't tell us." "I was ordered not to. Vance said the information was classified, that I should only share it if circumstances warranted. And circumstances like our dead voices screaming in the dark don't warrant it? I'm telling you now." Rebecca stood, holstering her weapon. She crossed to where I stood and looked up at me with those two knowing eyes. "You're not the only one who was briefed separately. Vance called me 2 days before we left. Told me about some of the irregularities reported by the original research staff. Before the disappearances." "What kind of irregularities?" Maya asked. "Temporal distortions. People reporting experiencing the same moment multiple times. Sounds and voices that didn't have a source. Equipment that would turn on by itself. And toward the end, just before everyone vanished, some of the researchers started seeing themselves. Like reflections, but wrong. Reflections that would move independently. That would say things they hadn't said. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "That's not possible," Jimmy said, but his voice lacked conviction. The official explanation was mass psychosis, brought on by exposure to the low-frequency sound waves they were using for the consciousness experiments. But Vance showed me some of the later reports, the classified ones. Whatever was happening here, it wasn't just psychological. The building itself was changing. Rooms that would rearrange overnight. Hallways that led to places they shouldn't. And recordings, dozens of recordings, of voices from the future, from the past, from times and places that hadn't happened yet, or had already ceased to exist. "Stop," Maya said. Her voice was small, childlike. "Just stop, this is insane. This is literally insane. It's the truth." Rebecca moved to her pack and pulled out a tablet in a protective case. "Vance gave me these. I wasn't supposed to share them unless absolutely necessary, but I think we're past that point." She powered on the tablet and opened a folder. Inside were dozens of scanned documents, incident reports, research logs, photographs. She selected one and held it up for us to see. The image showed what looked like a hallway, but something was wrong with it. The perspective was off, angles meeting at places that shouldn't be possible in Euclidean space. And in the center of the frame, blurred by motion or time or something else entirely, was a figure, a person, or the ghost of a person, smeared across reality like wet paint. This was taken on October 28, 1973, 3 days before everyone disappeared. The photographer was Dr. Catherine Marsh, one of the lead researchers. She wrote on the back of the photo, "South Hallway, Level B, I saw myself." She was running. She was trying to warn me. I couldn't hear what she was saying. "She?" Jimmy leaned closer to look at the image. Dr. Marsh wrote about herself in the third person. Like the reflection, or whatever it was separate from her. She did that in all her later logs. "She came again today." "She's crying now. She won't tell me why." Rebecca swiped to another image. "This is from the next day." The new photo showed the same hallway, but now there were 2 figures, both blurred, both moving, caught in some impossible moment between frames. Hand on the wall behind them, written in what looked like blood but probably wasn't, were words. "It's already happening." "What's already happening?" Maya whispered. "No one knows." Dr. Marsh didn't have time to explain before she disappeared with everyone else. I stared at the photos, my mind racing. The recording of my voice, the temporal distortions, the voices we just heard calling our names. It was all connected, all part of the same impossible phenomenon. But connected to what? What had the researchers here actually discovered? "The Hollows Institute was studying consciousness," I said slowly, working through it aloud, trying to record it, preserve it, maybe even transmit it. What if they succeeded? What if they found a way to separate consciousness from linear time, to exist outside the normal flow of cause and effect? "You're talking about time travel," Jimmy said flatly. "No, I'm talking about time consciousness. The ability to perceive or interact with multiple moments simultaneously. To exist in many times at once, that's not possible. Then explain the recordings. Explain how my voice is here when I've never been here before." Explain how we just heard ourselves calling out from a building we only entered 4 hours ago. Carlson had been silent through all of this, but now he spoke. When I was in here alone, checking the structure, I didn't just hear my name. So I saw something. He paused, swallowing hard. I saw myself. Just for a second, standing in the corner by that filing cabinet. I was older, maybe 10 years older, and I looked terrified. Then he was gone. The room fell silent again. This is what Vance wanted, Rebecca said finally. This is why she assembled this specific team. She knew something was still active here. She knew we'd encounter whatever this is. We're not here to assess the facility. We're here to document what happens when Livy E. Say it, present, future, all collapsed into one location. Then we need to leave, Maya insisted. Right now, before we get stuck here like they did. We might already be stuck, Rebecca said. Everyone turned to look at her. What do you mean? Carlson asked carefully. I mean, how do we know this is the first time we've had this conversation? How do we know we haven't already lived through these 5 days, already tried to leave, already failed? Those echoes out there, they could be us from previous iterations, trying to warn us, trying to break the loop. The implications of that hung in the air like smoke. No, Jimmy said firmly. No, I'm not accepting that. I remember the drive here. I remember everything that led up to this moment. I'm real. This is real. We're not stuck in some time loop. How would you know if you were? If your memories reset with each iteration? If you always think this is the first time, how would you ever know you'd been here before? Stop, Carlson said, his voice sharp. This is how people lose it. This is how rational minds break down. We are not trapped in a time loop. We are experiencing localized temporal phenomena, consistent with the research conducted here. That's all. Unusual, yes. Dangerous, probably. But we are still in control of our actions, still capable of rational thought, and we are still getting out of here in 4 days when extraction arrives. And if it doesn't? Rebecca asked. Then we walk out on our own. Through the forest? With those things out there? If we have to, yes. The day stretched on. We set up recording equipment, documented everything that had happened, tried to make sense of the impossible. Maya took air and soil samples, looking for environmental factors that might explain the phenomena. Jimmy worked on getting power to some of the old equipment in the building, hoping to access any data that might still be stored in the facility's systems. Rebecca pored over her classified files, looking for patterns, for explanations, for anything that might help us understand. I sat in a corner with my laptop, writing everything down. Every detail, every observation, every theory. If we disappeared like the others, someone would find this record. Someone would know what happened. Around 3 in the afternoon, judging by our watches, since the fog outside remained impenetrable, Jimmy got power running to one of the old computer terminals. It was a dinosaur, a mainframe system from the early 70s, but somehow it still functioned. The screen flickered to life, green text on a black background. Holy shit, Jimmy breathed. It's still got data. The system never fully shut down. It's been running on some kind of backup power for 50 years. We gathered around the terminal as Jimmy navigated through old file directories, research logs, personnel records, experiment protocols, and something else, a folder labeled Temporal Recordings. Open it, Rebecca said. Jimmy double-clicked. The folder contained hundreds of audio files, each labeled with a date and time. The most recent was from October 31st, 1973, the night everyone disappeared. Play it, I said. Jimmy selected the file. Static filled the room, harsh and loud. Then gradually voices emerged from the noise. Multiple voices, overlapping, panicked. Can't stop it. The loop is collapsing. Cahoots, please. Someone, anyone, we're still here. October 31st, 1973. This is Dr. Catherine Marsh, senior researcher. If anyone finds this recording, please understand that what happened here was not intentional. We were trying to map consciousness across temporal boundaries. We succeeded. But we didn't understand the consequences. The facility has become unstuck from linear time. Everyone here is caught in what we are calling the temporal echo. We exist simultaneously at every moment, between the experiment's activation and some unknown endpoint in the future. We see ourselves dying, we see ourselves trying to escape. We see ourselves making recordings like this one. And we can't stop it. The building won't let us leave. Every exit leads back to the beginning. Every attempt to escape just brings us deeper into the loop. If you're hearing this, if you've come to this place, you need to understand you're already part of it. The moment you entered the facility, you began leaving echoes. You're trapped in the same pattern we created. The only way out is... The recording cut off abruptly. No burst of static, no fade out. Just silence. The only way out is what? Maya whispered. What's the only way out? Jimmy scrubbed through the file, trying to find more, but that was where it ended. Whatever Dr. Marsh had been about to say had been lost to time or static or the collapsing loop itself. Try another file, Carlson said. Jimmy selected a recording from earlier in October. A different voice, male, clinical and professional. October 15th, 1973. Dr. Robert Vance, lead physicist. We've achieved stable temporal non-locality in test subjects. The implication is extraordinary. Consciousness is not bound by linear causality. We can record a person's thoughts before they think them, can preserve awareness of moments that haven't occurred yet. The applications are limitless. However, we're beginning to observe troubling side effects. Test subjects report feeling disconnected from present reality, experiencing what they describe as living in multiple times at once. Some have become catatonic, unable to determine which moment is real. We're suspending human trials until we can understand. Again, the recording ended abruptly. Vance, Rebecca said, as in Deputy Director Sarah Vance. Is she related to the original researcher? Must be, I said. That's why she's so interested in what happened here. It's personal. Jimmy was already pulling up more files, recording after recording, each one ending before its completion, each one documenting the facility's descent into temporal chaos. Researchers seeing themselves, equipment turning itself on, rooms rearranging, and always, the growing certainty that they were trapped, that they'd created something they couldn't control. The last recording was from October 30th, just before the final disappearance. Dr. Catherine Marsh again, but her voice had changed, hollowed out. Defeated. I'm recording this from the observation deck. I can see all of it from here. All of us, all the times, all layered on top of each other like exposed film. There's no exit, because every exit leads to an entrance we've already walked through. We're a loop, a closed time-like curve. The only way to break it is to prevent the initial experiment from happening, but we can't do that because it's already happened. Unless someone from outside the loop could reach the moment of origin, could interrupt the pattern at its source. But who could? The recording ended. The moment of origin, I said. She's talking about when the experiment was first activated. If we could find that moment, interact with it somehow, maybe we could break the loop. How? Maya asked. We don't have a time machine. We don't need one. We're already unstuck from time, remember? The echoes we saw, they're us from different moments. If the loop is real, if we're really experiencing multiple timelines simultaneously, then theoretically we could perceive the moment of origin. We could find it and change it. And if we can't, then we're trapped here just like they were, leaving echoes, living and dying in every moment at once until someone else comes along and starts the cycle again. Night fell, or what passed for night in the perpetual fog. We ate another cold meal and tried to pretend this was a normal research expedition. But the normalcy was a thin veneer over mounting dread. We all knew what was happening. We were becoming part of the facility, being absorbed into its temporal architecture. Every moment we spent here left a copy, an echo, another version of ourselves trapped in the endless loop. At some point during the night, I fell asleep despite my best intentions. When I woke, it was to the sound of singing, the same song I'd heard yesterday but closer now, and I recognized it. An old folk song, something my mother used to sing when I was a child. The Bramble and the Rose. But the voice singing it wasn't my mother's, it was Claire's. I sat up slowly, my heart hammering. The others were asleep, their breathing deep and even. The door to the building stood open, fog curling through the entrance, and standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the grey, was a figure. Even before she turned, I knew it was Claire. She looked exactly as she had the last time I'd seen her alive. Jeans and a green sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. That slight smile that had first made me fall in love with her. She turned to face me and her eyes met mine. "Hello, Ethan," she said. Her voice was exactly as I remembered. "I've been waiting for you. This couldn't be real." Claire was dead. I'd identified her body at the morgue. I'd watched them lower her casket into the ground. This was just another echo, another manifestation of the facility's temporal distortions. My own consciousness projected back at me. But God, I wanted it to be real. You're not her. I managed to say, "No," Claire agreed. "I'm not. I'm what you've been looking for since she died. I'm the echo of every conversation you wish you'd had, every word you never got to say, every future that got stolen from you. The facility can feel that. It feeds on loss, on absence, on all the moments that should have been but weren't. That's what the experiments really did. They didn't just record consciousness. They recorded longing, grief, all the temporal weight of things left undone. So you're just a reflection of my pain. I'm more than that. I'm a possibility. In some versions of time, I didn't die. In some versions, you never came to this place. In some versions, we're still together. Still happy, still living the life we planned. The facility has access to all of those times, all of those might-have-beens. I could show you. I could take you to those moments. I wanted to believe her. Desperately wanted to believe that somewhere, somehow, Claire was still alive, that I could reach her if I just followed this echo deep enough into the facility's twisted temporal architecture. But I knew what that meant. I'd read the reports. I'd heard the recordings. The researchers who'd followed their echoes had never come back. "You're trying to trap me," I said. "I'm trying to give you what you want. Isn't that why you really came here? Not for the research, not for the assessment. You came because you thought you could find her again. You heard your voice on that recording and you thought, maybe, just maybe, time doesn't have to work the way you've always believed. Maybe the dead aren't really gone. Maybe they're just existing in another moment, waiting for us to figure out how to reach them." Tears were streaming down my face now. "Even if that's true, even if she's somehow still alive in another timeline, I can't reach her. I'd just become another echo, another ghost trapped in this place. Or maybe you'd become something else. Maybe you'd become the first person to truly move through time, to exist in multiple moments by choice, rather than by accident. Maybe you'd be free." She held out her hand. Behind me I heard movement. Rebecca waking up, seeing me standing at the doorway with the echo. "Ethan, no. Don't listen to it. Don't go with it." Claire's, the echo's smile never wavered. "She's afraid. They're all afraid, because they haven't lost what you've lost. They still have futures waiting for them. But you? Your future ended with me. The only way forward is backward, into the moments that were stolen from you. Ethan." Rebecca was on her feet now, reaching for me. "It's not her. It's not real. Does it matter?" I heard myself say. "Does it matter if it's real or not? If it's the only way I'll ever see her again?" I took a step toward the door. Toward Claire. Toward the fog and whatever lay beyond. Rebecca grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Listen to me. I know what you're feeling. I know the temptation. But if you go with that thing, you're gone. You'll become another echo. Another voice calling out from the dark. Is that what Claire would want? For you to throw away your life chasing a shadow?" The echo of Claire tilted its head, still smiling. "I'll be here when you're ready, Ethan. I'll always be here. In every moment, in every echo, waiting for you to make the choice." Then, like smoke, she was gone. The fog rushed into the building, cold and wet and empty. I stood there, shaking, Rebecca's hand still on my arm. The others were awake now, watching me with mixtures of concern and understanding. They knew what I'd almost done. They knew how close I'd come to stepping through that door and never coming back. "Thank you," I finally managed to say to Rebecca. "Don't thank me, just stay away from the doors tonight. Stay away from anything that looks like it might be offering you what you want most. That's how this place works. It learns what you're missing and shows it to you. It tempts you deeper with promises of finding what you've lost." "What have you lost?" I asked quietly. Her expression hardened. "That's not important. What's important is that we all remember we're here to document this place, not to become part of it. We stay focused. We stay rational. We survive the next 3 days and get the hell out." But even as she said it, I could hear the doubt in her voice. Because we'd all seen the echoes. We'd all heard the voices. We'd all started to understand that we weren't investigating the Hollows Institute. We were already part of it, and somewhere in the temporal chaos, in the folded and refolded moments that made up this place, our past selves and our future selves were all experiencing this same realization, all making the same choices, all becoming the same echoes. The loop was already complete. We just hadn't finished living through it yet. As dawn broke, or what passed for dawn in the perpetual twilight of Black Hollow, we gathered around the terminal again. Jimmy had been working through the night, pulling up more files, more recordings, trying to find patterns in the chaos. "I think I found something," he said, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "There's a file dated November 1st, 1973, the day after everyone disappeared." "That's impossible," Carlson said. "If everyone was gone, who made the recording?" "That's what I'm trying to tell you. No one made it. It was just there, in the system, like it had always been there." He opened the file, static. Then a voice, barely audible beneath the noise. It took me a moment to recognize it. It was my voice. "October 31st, 2023, the recording me said. 50 years to the day after the original disappearance. My name is Dr. Ethan Ward. I'm recording this from the observation deck of the main research building. I need anyone who finds this to understand what really happened here. The experiments didn't trap people in a temporal loop. The experiments revealed that we were already in one. All of us, all of time. The universe itself is a closed curve, beginning and ending at the same moment, playing out every possibility simultaneously. The Hollows Institute just found a way to perceive it, to see the pattern. And once you see it, once you understand that every choice you make has already been made and will be made again forever, well, that's when you become an echo. That's when you realize you were never really alive at all. You were just a recording playing in an empty room, thinking you were real, but found a way to break the pattern. Found the moment of origin. The recording ended October 31st, 2023, that was today. Right now, we have to go to the observation deck, I said. I have to make that recording. Are you insane? Maya stood up, backing away from me. You can't make that recording. If you do, you're just fulfilling the loop, ensuring it continues. We have to break the pattern, not complete it. Maybe completing it is how we break it. Maybe the only way out is through. Or maybe, Rebecca said quietly, the only way out is to not play the game at all, to refuse to make the choices the loop expects us to make. And how do we do that when we don't know what choices the loop expects? No one had an answer. The fog pressed against the windows. Somewhere in the facility, echoes of ourselves moved through corridors we hadn't yet explored, living moments we hadn't yet experienced, making recordings we hadn't yet made. And in the observation deck of the main research building, a version of me was waiting, preparing to speak words into a microphone that would be heard 50 years ago and 50 years hence, and every moment in between. The pattern was complete. We just had to live it. The observation deck. We stood in that cold administrative building for nearly an hour, arguing in circles about what to do next. Maya insisted we should try to leave immediately, even if it meant hiking through the forest in daylight. Jimmy wanted to stay put and try to access more files to understand the full scope of what we were dealing with. Rebecca kept returning to the classified reports, looking for some pattern we'd missed. And Carlson. Carlson kept checking his watch as if time still mattered in a place where past and future bled together like watercolors in rain. I knew what I had to do. The recording of my voice from November 1st, a date that was today now, meant that at some point in the next few hours, I would go to the observation deck. I would make that recording. The loop demanded it. The question was whether I could change what I said, whether I could break the pattern by speaking different words, making different choices than the echo expected. I'm going to the main building, I announced. Absolutely not. Carlson's voice had the sharp edge of command. We agreed. No one goes anywhere alone. Then come with me, all of you. But I have to go to that observation deck. You heard the recording? I'm already there. Or I will be. Or I was. However time works in this place, that recording exists, which means I have to make it. Unless we choose not to, Maya said. Unless we break the causal chain. And what happens then? What happens if I refuse to fulfill the loop? Does reality just fracture? Do we all cease to exist because we created a paradox? Or maybe nothing happens, Rebecca offered. Maybe the recording is from one iteration of the loop, and we're in a different one now. Maybe every time someone comes here, the pattern plays out slightly differently. Jimmy had been quiet through all of this, but now he spoke up. There's something else. Something I didn't want to mention, but when I was going through the files last night, I found personnel records, employee photos from 1973. He pulled up an image on the tablet. This is Dr. Robert Vance, the lead physicist. The face on the screen made my blood run cold. The features were different, older, more weathered, but the bone structure was unmistakable. It was Carlson. That's impossible, Carlson said, but his voice shook. That's not me. I wasn't even born in 1973. Neither was I said quietly. But my voice is on a recording from November 1973. Time doesn't work right here, remember? Past and future all collapse together. Jimmy swiped to another image. This is Dr. Catherine Marsh. Rebecca's face stared back at us from the screen. And this, Jimmy continued, his voice barely above a whisper, is Dr. Sarah Chen, Maya. Younger, her hair styled differently, but undeniably Maya. Show me the rest, I said. 2 more photos, Dr. James Delacroix, Jimmy himself, the same easy smile, the same sharp eyes. And Dr. Ethan Ward, my own face looking out from 50 years ago, serious and haunted even then. We're them, Maya breathed. We're the original research team. No, Carlson insisted. No, this is just... It's the facility playing tricks, showing us what we fear, It's the truth, Rebecca cut him off. Don't you see? This is the loop. We came here 50 years ago. We conducted the experiments. We created the temporal distortion. And then we disappeared only to be born again, live different lives and return here to do it all over again. We're trapped in our own pattern. The implications settled over us like ash. If we were the original researchers, if we'd already lived through this 50 years ago, then everything we did now had already been done. Every choice had already been made. Every word had already been spoken. We were echoes of ourselves, playing out a script written in temporal stone. I don't accept that, I said, surprised by the strength in my own voice. Even if we were here before, even if we've lived through this loop 1,000 times, this moment right now is real. My consciousness is real. My choices matter, even if they've been made before. I'm going to that observation deck, and I'm going to try to change what happens. Maybe I'll fail. Maybe I've already failed 1,000 times. But I have to try. Then we all go, Rebecca said. If this is our pattern, then we live it together. No one argued. What was there to argue? The photos had shown us the truth. We weren't investigating the Hollows Institute. We were its creators. Returned to the scene of our crime against causality itself. We geared up in silence. Flashlights, recording equipment, first aid kits. All the tools of rational scientific investigation applied to a situation that had long since transcended rationality. As we prepared, I noticed that our movements had a strange synchronicity to them. We reached for equipment at the same time, turned toward the door in unison, spoke our few necessary words in rhythm like a well-rehearsed chorus. How many times had we done this before? The fog outside had thickened impossibly, reducing visibility to barely 5 feet. We formed a chain, each person holding onto the one ahead, and moved toward the main research building. The ground beneath our feet seemed to shift subtly, as if the earth itself was uncertain about its position in space and time. The vibration that had been constant since our arrival was stronger now, no longer just felt but heard, a deep thrumming that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It matched the rhythm of my heartbeat, or maybe my heartbeat had synchronized with it. I couldn't tell anymore. As we approached the main building, shapes began to resolve out of the fog, not just the building itself, but figures. Dozens of them, maybe more, all standing motionless between us and our destination. Echoes. They didn't try to stop us as we passed. They just watched, their faces familiar and wrong in equal measure. I saw myself at different ages, younger, older, wearing different clothes, bearing different scars. I saw Maya crying, her face streaked with tears I hadn't yet seen her shed. I saw Jimmy laughing, but the sound that came from him was the wet tearing noise from the recording, distorted and horrible. I saw Carlson with blood on his hands and Rebecca with her eyes closed, lips moving in what might have been prayer or might have been madness. "Don't look at them," Rebecca said. "Don't make eye contact. They'll pull you in if you let them." But I couldn't look away, because among the echoes I saw Claire again. Not the version from last night, but older. My age, maybe older than I'd ever see her in reality. She stood apart from the others, and when our eyes met, she mouthed words I couldn't hear. I'm sorry, for what? For dying? For leaving me alone to fall into this nightmare? Or for something else, something I hadn't discovered yet? The steel door of the main building stood open. Not broken or forced, just open, as if it had been waiting for us. The interior was pitch black, our flashlight beams barely penetrating the darkness. The air that flowed out smelled of ozone and copper, and that indefinable wrongness that permeated the entire facility. Ladies first. Jimmy tried to joke, but his voice cracked. We entered. The inside of the building was colder than outside, cold enough that our breath came in thick plumes. The walls were concrete, unpainted, sweating condensation that caught our lights and threw back strange reflections. The floor was polished steel, our footsteps ringing out in hollow echoes that seemed to repeat far longer than physics should allow. The layout made no sense. Hallways branched off at impossible angles. Doors opened onto rooms that seemed too large to fit within the building's exterior. Staircases led both up and down from the same landing. It was as if the facility had been designed by someone who understood only the abstract concept of architecture without grasping its physical limitations, or perhaps it had been designed in multiple timelines simultaneously, each version overlapping the others, until the result was this non-Euclidean nightmare. "The observation deck should be on the 7th floor," Carlson said, consulting his tablet. But the map on the screen kept shifting, rearranging itself as we watched. "Or maybe the 5th. The building plans don't match what's actually here." "Nothing here matches what should be," Maya said. She was taking readings with a device I didn't recognize. "The electromagnetic field is off the charts. And there's something else. Temporal radiation, if that's even a thing that exists. It's like the building is radiating time itself." We found a stairwell and began to climb. Each floor we passed was labeled, but the numbers didn't progress logically. Floor 3, then floor 7, then floor 2, then floor B. Some floors had multiple doors, all labeled differently. Others had no doors at all, just blank concrete walls. On what the sign claimed was floor 5, we heard singing again. The same folk song, "The Bramble and the Rose," coming from somewhere deeper in the building. But now it wasn't just Claire's voice. It was all of our voices, harmonizing in impossible ways, singing words we'd never learned. "Keep moving," Rebecca urged. "Don't listen. Don't follow the sound." But Jimmy had stopped, his head tilted, listening. "That's my grandmother's voice," he whispered. "She died when I was 10. How does this place know her voice?" "It doesn't," I said, though I wasn't sure. "It's pulling from your memories, reconstructing her from what you remember. It's not real. Then why does it feel so real?" Because that was the trap. Because the facility didn't just show you echoes of yourself. It showed you echoes of everyone you'd lost, everyone you longed for, everyone you'd give anything to see again. It weaponized your grief and used it to pull you deeper into the temporal chaos. We climbed higher. The air grew thinner, harder to breathe. The walls seemed to press inward, the space contracting around us, and always that thrumming vibration, growing stronger with each floor we ascended. On floor 6, or perhaps floor 9, the signs kept changing. We found the first body. It was slumped against the wall, dressed in a lab coat from the 1970s, decay impossible to judge in this place. The face was mummified, leather-dry skin stretched over bone, but the name tag was still legible. Dr. R. Vance Carlson stared at it, at his own face from 50 years ago, dead but not quite gone. "Don't," Rebecca said, pulling him back. "Don't touch it. Don't acknowledge it. It's just another echo." "He's me," Carlson said. His voice was distant, dreamy. "I died here. I'm going to die here. This is what looked like when I'm dead. You're not dead. You're alive right now in this moment. That's what matters." But Carlson was shaking his head. "Don't you understand? We can't escape this. We're already dead. We died 50 years ago, and everything since then has been the echo. We're not investigating this facility. We are the facility. Our consciousness recorded and looped, playing back forever in this location. Tom." Rebecca grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. "Listen to me. That's what the facility wants you to think. That's how it keeps you here. But you're real. You're alive. Your choices matter. Now move." Slowly, Carlson nodded. We continued climbing, leaving the corpse behind. At the top of the stairwell, we found a door labeled Observation Deck. Unlike the others, this one was clean, unmarked by time or decay. The handle gleamed as if it had been polished recently. "This is it," I said. "The recording was made from here." "Then we don't go in," Maya insisted. "We turn around right now and walk away. We refuse to complete the pattern. And then what? We're still trapped in the building, still caught in the loop. The only way forward is through the moment that's waiting for us." I pushed the door open. The observation deck was a circular room with windows on all sides, though the glass was so dirty with age and grime that little light penetrated. In the center of the room was a control station covered in equipment from the 1970s, reel-to-reel recorders, oscilloscopes, banks of switches and dials. And sitting at the control station, perfectly preserved as if no time had passed at all, was a figure. It was me, not an echo. Not a temporal distortion, just me older, dressed in the same clothes I was wearing now, but worn and stained. My future self sat at the controls, one hand on the microphone, frozen in the act of speaking. "Jesus Christ," Jimmy breathed. I approached slowly, the others hanging back. As I got closer, I could see that future me wasn't frozen. He was moving just incredibly slowly, existing at a different rate of temporal flow. So over the course of 30 seconds, his lips moved perhaps a quarter of an inch. On the reel-to-reel machine, a tape was spooling, recording something. Next to it, a date stamp read November 1st, 1973, 50 years ago. And today, and possibly every day in between, all collapsed into this single moment. What do I do? I asked, though I wasn't sure who I was asking. My future self? My past self? The facility itself? Future me's eyes moved slowly, tracking to look at me. It took a full minute for his gaze to complete the motion. When it did, I saw no fear in those eyes, just exhaustion. And perhaps relief. He was waiting for me to replace him, to take his place at the microphone and speak the words that needed to be spoken, so he could finally be released from this moment. I moved to the control station. The equipment hummed with power that shouldn't exist, running on temporal energy that bent reality itself. The microphone was old but functional, the kind used in radio broadcasts from decades past. "What are you doing?" Carlson asked behind me. "What I have to do, what I've already done, what I'll do forever in every iteration of this loop. Ethan, please, listen." I held up a hand. "All of you, listen. If we're trapped here, if we've been here before and we'll be here again, then maybe the only thing we can do is leave a message. Leave evidence that we were real, that we chose this, that we weren't just echoes repeating mindlessly." I sat down at the control station. Future me began to fade, his form becoming translucent, bleeding away into the temporal static as took his place in the pattern. The sensation was indescribable, like stepping into a photograph of yourself, like becoming your own reflection, like dying and being reborn in the same instant. The microphone was cold under my hand. The tape recorder spun, waiting, began to speak. October 31st, 2023, 50 years to the day after the original disappearance. My name is Dr. Ethan Ward. I'm recording this from the observation deck of the main research building. The words came easily, as if I'd rehearsed them 1,000 times. Perhaps had. Perhaps in every iteration of the loop, I'd sat here and spoken these exact words. But this time it would say something different. Something that might break the pattern. I need anyone who finds this to understand what really happened here. The experiments didn't trap people in a temporal loop. The experiments revealed that we were already in one. Behind me, I heard Maya gasp. Rebecca was saying something, but her voice seemed distant, filtered through layers of time. All of us, all of time. The universe itself is a closed curve, beginning and ending at the same moment, playing out every possibility simultaneously. The Hollows Institute just found a way to perceive it, to see the pattern. The room was changing. Through the dirty windows, I could see the fog beginning to glow. Not with light, but with something else, temporal energy, the raw stuff of causality itself, becoming visible as it bent and folded around the facility. And once you see it, once you understand that every choice you make has already been made and will be made again, forever, well, that's when you become an echo. That's when you realize you were never really alive at all. You were just a recording playing in an empty room, thinking you were real. No, that wasn't right. I wasn't just a recording. I was alive. I was real. Even trapped in the loop, even speaking words I'd spoken before I was making a choice. But I found a way to break the pattern, had I? Was that true? In what future or past had discovered something? The words kept coming, pulled from me by the pattern itself. I found the moment of origin. And that's when I felt it. Not pain exactly, but a tearing sensation, as if my consciousness was being pulled in multiple directions at once. Past and future, all the versions of me that existed in different moments, all trying to occupy the same space. I looked down at my hands and saw them flickering, becoming translucent, overlapping with other hands from other times. Young hands, old hands, hands covered in blood, hands holding Claire's hand on our wedding day. All of them mine, all of them real, all of them existing simultaneously. The wet, tearing sound filled the air. It wasn't coming from the speakers or the equipment. It was the sound of time itself being torn, of causality being violated, of consciousness being stretched across moments it was never meant to traverse. Tried to finish the sentence, to say what I had found, what I had learned, how to break the pattern. But the words wouldn't come. They were lost in the static, in the temporal chaos, In the screaming of dozens of versions of myself all trying to speak at once, the recording ended, and I was still there, trapped at the microphone, becoming the frozen figure that my past self would find someday, somehow completing the loop. But something was different. In that moment of transition, in that instant of becoming, I saw it. The pattern. The whole pattern. Every iteration of the loop. Every version of the story. Every choice made by every version of ourselves. And understood. We weren't trapped by the facility. We were the facility. Our consciousness, our memories, our choices, they had become the structure itself. The buildings were made of moments. The walls were constructed from decisions. The doors opened onto different possibilities. And somewhere in that vast architecture of time, there was a door that led out, not to the past or the future, but sideways, into a version of reality where the loop had never begun. The moment of origin. October 31st, 1973, the night the experiment was first activated. If we could reach that moment, not as echoes but as conscious actors, we could prevent it from happening. We could collapse the loop before it formed, but how? How do you move through time when time itself has become a prison? The answer came to me from the recording I'd just made, from the words I'd spoken in iterations, couldn't remember, found a way, which meant somewhere, somewhen, had already discovered the answer. Just had to remember it. Had to access the memory of a moment hadn't lived yet, or had lived long ago, or was living right now in some other layer of reality. The facility could show us echoes, could make us see ourselves from different times. But what if we could reverse that? What if we could project ourselves into the echoes, use them as doorways into other moments? It was insane. But everything here was insane. The question was whether insanity could be weaponized, turned back against the thing that created it. I stood up from the control station, my legs shaking. The others were still there, but they seemed distant, like I was viewing them through thick glass. They were speaking, but I couldn't hear them. The transition had changed something in me, pulled me slightly out of sync with their timeline. I looked down at the control station and saw it clearly now. Not just equipment, but a map. The switches and dials weren't controls. They were waypoints. Each one corresponded to a moment in time, a specific pull. End in the facility's history. And one of them was labeled October 31st, 1973, 11:47 p.m., the moment of origin. I reached for the dial, but before I could touch it, hands grabbed me. Rebecca and Carlson pulling me back, their mouths moving in words I couldn't hear but could guess. Don't, stop, not safe, but I had to. Because in however many iterations of this loop we'd lived through, this was the moment where things could change. This was where the pattern could break. I pulled free from their grip and slammed my hand down on the dial labeled October 31st, 1973. Reality screamed. The observation deck dissolved around us, bleeding away like wet paint. For an instant that lasted forever, we existed in the space between moments, in the temporal static that was the facility's true substance. I saw all of it, every version of every person who'd ever entered this place, every choice made and unmade, every timeline branching and recombining in an infinite fractal of causality. And then we were falling, tumbling through time itself, pulled backward along the loop toward its beginning. The impact, when it came, was brutal and absolute. When I opened my eyes, everything was different. The observation deck was pristine, clean white walls, polished floors, equipment that gleamed with newness. Through the windows, could see the forest in daylight. Real daylight, not the fog-shrouded twilight we'd been trapped in. And standing at the control stations, wearing lab coats and expressions of intense concentration, were 5 researchers. Us not echoes. Not temporal projections. The actual original research team from 1973, living and breathing and completely unaware that we were watching them from where, when. I looked down at myself and saw my hands were translucent, flickering in and out of solidity. The others were the same. Ghost versions of ourselves, pulled out of our proper time and inserted into this moment like unwanted footage spliced into a film. "Where are we?" Maya whispered, her voice distorted, echoing. "When are we?" Rebecca corrected. "We're in 1973, the night of the experiment. We're watching the moment of origin." The past us, or were we the past them, didn't seem to notice our presence. They were too focused on their work, preparing equipment, checking readings, speaking in the professional shorthand of long-practiced team members. All systems are nominal, Past Jimmy said, his voice younger, his accent thicker. The low-frequency generators are at optimal levels. We are ready to begin the consciousness recording sequence. Wait. Past Rebecca, Dr. Catherine Marsh in this timeline held up a hand. Has anyone double-checked the temporal shielding? The last trial run showed some concerning fluctuations in the electromagnetic field. It's fine, Past Carlson, Dr. Robert Vance insisted. We've reinforced all the safeguards. The consciousness recording will be contained within the facility. There's no risk of temporal bleed-through, but I could see the future Rebecca's face as she watched her past self accept that answer. I could see the knowledge in her eyes. Those safeguards had failed. The temporal bleed-through had happened. This entire nightmare had been born in this moment. From this choice, can they see us? Jimmy asked, waving his hand in front of Past Jimmy's face. No reaction. We're out of phase, I said, understanding dawning. We're here, but we're not. We're observers, not participants. Then how do we stop the experiment? Carlson demanded. If we can't interact with them, can't warn them, how do we prevent this? Past me, Dr. Ethan Ward, looking impossibly young, was speaking. All right, let's begin. I'm activating the consciousness field generator. If the theory is correct, we should be able to record human thought patterns at their quantum level and preserve them indefinitely. Subject 1, please step into the isolation chamber. A door at the far end of the observation deck opened and a woman entered. She was young, maybe 30, with dark hair and nervous eyes. She wore a white gown and a sensor cap covered in electrodes. Test subject confirmed, Pasmaya, Dr. Sarah Chen said, noting something on her clipboard. Subject 1, Dr. Claire Ward, volunteer, age 34. No known contraindications, Claire, my Claire. Younger than I'd ever known her, but unmistakably her. She walked to the center of the room and sat in a chair surrounded by equipment. And even 50 years separated from me, I could see the apprehension in her posture. I tried to scream, tried to warn them, but no sound came out. I was a ghost watching the past, powerless to change it. Claire volunteered for this. I managed to ask. She was here? She was part of the experiment. Rebecca looked at me with something like pity. You didn't know? Vance didn't tell you? Tell me what? Your wife didn't die in a car accident last year, Ethan. She died here in 1973 in this experiment. Everything you remember about her, your life together, your marriage, all of it, those are implanted memories, echoes of a life that never happened, created by the facility to bring you back here. To close the loop. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. I had memories of Claire spanning years. I remembered our first date, our wedding, the house we bought together, the morning she kissed me goodbye before the accident that killed her. Those were real memories. They had to be real. But even as I insisted that to myself, I felt them beginning to slip away, like dreams fading in the morning light. And underneath them, other memories surfaced. Memories of this place, of being Dr. Ethan Ward, young researcher, married to Claire Ward, brilliant physicist, who had volunteered to be the first human subject in the consciousness recording experiment. No, I whispered. No, that's not possible. The facility rewrites reality, Rebecca said quietly. It changes the past to ensure the future it needs. You died here in 1973, Ethan, we all did. But our consciousness was recorded, preserved, looped. And then the facility projected us forward, gave us new lives, new memories, ensured we'd be born again and return here to complete the pattern. Everything we think we know about ourselves is just a story the facility told us to keep the loop intact. Past me was speaking. Beginning consciousness recording sequence. Claire, you're going to hear a low-frequency tone. Don't be alarmed. Just relax and let your mind drift. We're going to map every neural pathway, every thought pattern, every memory. When we're done, we'll have a complete recording of your consciousness. Claire nodded, trying to smile. And you're sure it's safe? Completely safe. We've run dozens of simulations. You'll feel a little disoriented afterward, but there are no lasting effects. In a few hours, you'll go home, and you'll be helping us make history. The equipment hummed to life. The low-frequency tone began. The same thrumming vibration we'd felt throughout the facility. Claire's eyes fluttered closed. The researchers monitored their instruments, completely focused, completely unaware that they were about to tear a hole in the fabric of reality itself. I watched, helpless as the woman I loved, or thought I loved, or had loved in some timeline that might or might not be real, submitted to the experiment that would trap her consciousness here forever. The tone intensified. Claire's body began to convulse. Warning lights flashed on the equipment, but the researchers didn't stop the procedure. They were too fascinated by what they were seeing. By the readings that showed consciousness being successfully recorded, pulled out of the physical brain and preserved in the electromagnetic field generated by their equipment. "We're getting something," Past Rebecca said, her voice filled with awe. "It's working. We're actually recording human consciousness. This is incredible. Hold on." Past me leaned closer to one of the monitors. "There's something wrong. The temporal field is expanding beyond the containment parameters. It's not just recording her present consciousness. It's pulling in her past and future states. All versions of her, from all moments in her timeline, all being recorded simultaneously." "Shut it down," Past Carlson ordered. Now, but it was too late. The equipment had taken on a life of its own, the low-frequency generators building to a crescendo. Claire's body arched in the chair, her mouth open in a scream we could see but not hear. And around her, forming in the air like smoke, were other Claires. Dozens of them, hundreds, every possible version of her from every possible moment, all being pulled into the recording. The air itself began to tear. That sound. That wet tearing sound from the recording. It wasn't fabric. It was reality itself, causality being ripped apart by forces that shouldn't exist. Through the tears I could see other times, other places. I saw the facility as it would be in 50 years, abandoned and fog-shrouded. I saw it as it had been before construction, virgin forest and ancient stones. I saw it in 1,000 different configurations, all existing simultaneously, all bleeding into each other. And through one of those tears, I saw myself. The future me from the observation deck, still sitting at the microphone, still recording the message that would loop forever. He was looking directly at me, across 50 years of twisted time, and his lips were moving. I couldn't hear him, but I could read the words, "Break the field generator. Now." I looked around the observation deck, trying to understand. We were ghosts here, unable to interact with the past. How could we? Then I saw it, a wrench, left carelessly on a control panel. It was solid, real, existing in both our time and theirs, a physical object that bridged the temporal gap. I lunged for it. My hand passed through it once, twice, 3 times. But on the 4th try, my fingers closed around metal. For just an instant, I became solid, real, existing fully in this moment. I swung the wrench at the main consciousness field generator. The glass face shattered. Sparks erupted. The low-frequency tone became a shriek, then died completely. Claire collapsed in the chair, unconscious but breathing. The tears in reality began to seal themselves, the other timelines receding back into their proper places. But the damage was done. The facility had been awakened. The consciousness recording had begun, and now it couldn't stop. It would continue recording, continue preserving, continue trapping everyone who entered this place in an eternal present built from fragments of past and future. The past researchers were panicking now, trying to stabilize the equipment, trying to understand what had just happened. Past me was cradling Claire, checking her vital signs. Past Carlson was shouting orders. Past Rebecca was taking readings that made no sense. And then slowly they all turned to look at us. They could see us now. The destruction of the generator had bridged the gap between times, made us visible to our past selves. For a long moment, nobody moved. The researchers from 1973 stared at their future echoes, and we stared back, seeing ourselves as we had been before the facility changed us. Past me stood, releasing Claire gently to the floor. He approached slowly, studying my face. "Who are you?" "I'm you," I said. "From the future. From 50 years in the future, and I'm here to tell you that what you started today doesn't end. It can't end. You've created a loop, and all of us, all versions of us from all times, are trapped inside it. That's impossible. You're looking at impossible. You're talking to impossible. We're standing here in your present, brought back by the same forces you just unleashed. Nothing is impossible anymore. You've broken causality itself." Past Carlson had joined past me, both of them staring at us like we were specimens under glass. "If what you're saying is true, If we're trapped in a temporal loop, then how do we stop it? How do we break free? I don't know, I admitted. I thought coming back to this moment would give us the answer. I thought we could prevent the experiment from happening. But we can't, it's already happened. We're already trapped. The loop is already complete. There has to be a way. Past Rebecca was examining the damaged generator. If consciousness can be recorded, if it can be preserved across time, then theoretically it can also be erased. We could destroy all the recordings, wipe the facility's memory clean, reset everything too before the experiment began. Won't work, future Rebecca said. The recordings aren't stored in the equipment. They're stored in the building itself, in the very structure of space-time around this location. You'd have to unmake the facility completely, and even then the temporal scars would remain. Claire was beginning to stir on the floor. I knelt beside her, and she opened her eyes and looked at me. There was recognition there, but also confusion. She was seeing me from her time and mine simultaneously, all our possible relationships overlapping in her consciousness. "Ethan," she whispered, "what's happening? I saw so many things, so many lives. Were they all real?" "I don't know," I said honestly. Maybe they were all possible, all existing in different timelines, and the experiment showed them all to you at once. I saw us married. I saw us happy. I saw us growing old together." Tears ran down her face. "But I also saw you alone. I saw me dying over and over, in different ways. Car accident, disease, murder. And in every version you came here looking for me. You always come here. Because you're here," I said. "Or a version of you is. The facility recorded you, preserved you. And somehow in timelines where you die, I'm drawn back to this place, trying to find you again. Then I'm the reason the loop exists. I'm the bait the facility uses to keep bringing you back." Before I could respond, the building began to shake. Not physically, the walls and floor remained steady, but reality itself was shaking. The temporal framework buckling under the weight of too many paradoxes, too many versions of the same people existing in the same moment. "We have to go," Carlson said. "Whatever we change by coming here, it's destabilizing the whole structure. If we don't get back to our own time, we'll be stuck here permanently." "How do we get back?" Maya asked. "We don't control when we are. We don't at the dial," I said. "On the observation deck, in our time. It brought us here. It can take us back. We just have to focus on our own present, our own moment." And the world twisted. For an instant, I saw all of it simultaneously. 1973 and 2023, and every year in between, all layered on top of each other like overexposed film. I saw the facility being built. I saw it abandoned. I saw researchers working, dying, becoming echoes. I saw ourselves at every age, living every possible version of our lives. And I saw the pattern, the great cosmic pattern that the experiment had revealed. Time wasn't a line. It was a loop. And we were the thread that kept it closed, returning again and again to this moment, trying and failing to break free. Then the moment passed and we were back in the observation deck. 2023. Fog pressing against the windows. The dial marked October 31st, 1973, now cold and dark under my hand. We had failed. We'd gone back to the moment of origin, and we hadn't changed anything. The loop remained intact, but something had changed. I could feel it even if I couldn't name it. Some small alteration in the pattern, some crack in the facade of inevitability. Claire's voice echoed in my memory. "You always come here, not because the facility trapped me, but because I chose to come. Because some part of me in every iteration of the loop knew that she was here and refused to abandon her. Maybe that was the answer. Not to break the loop, but to choose it. To accept it. To stop fighting the pattern and instead embrace it, transform it from a prison into a home. We need to leave this building, Rebecca said, her voice shaking. Right now, before something else happens. We didn't argue. We fled down the stairs, through the impossible hallways, back out into the fog and the cold. The echoes watched us go, silent sentinels marking our passage. When we reached the administrative building, we barricaded the door and collapsed onto our sleeping bags, exhausted beyond words. No one spoke. What was there to say? We'd seen the origin of our nightmare and learned that we were its architects. We'd tried to change the past and discovered we were the past. Outside, the fog pressed close, and somewhere in its depths, Echoes of ourselves moved through their eternal patterns. And I knew with absolute certainty that we were still trapped, still caught in the loop, but I also knew something else, something the facility might not have anticipated. We remembered going back to 1973. We remembered seeing our past selves, and that meant we had broken one rule of the loop. We had brought knowledge from one iteration into another. It was a small crack in the pattern. But cracks, if exploited properly, could bring down entire structures. I just had to figure out how. Fragments of memory, the second day in black. Hollow began not with sunrise. There was no sunrise in the perpetual fog, but with screaming Maya's screaming. I jolted awake to find her standing in the center of the room, staring at her hands with an expression of pure horror. The others scrambled up around me, weapons drawn, searching for threats. "What is it?" Carlson demanded. "What's wrong?" "My hands," Maya gasped. "Look at my hands." We looked. At first didn't see anything unusual. Then I noticed it. Her hands were flickering, becoming translucent for brief moments before solidifying again. Like the echo state we'd experienced in 1973, but now it was happening here, in our present. "It's happening to all of us," Rebecca said quietly. She held up her own hands and I could see the same flickering. Present, absent, like a failing television signal. I looked down at myself and saw it too. My physical form was becoming unstable, caught between states of existence. We were starting to dissolve into echoes ourselves. "How long has it been since we last slept?" Jimmy asked. "Real sleep, I mean, uninterrupted. We tried to calculate. The night we'd arrived. The expedition to the observation deck. The trip to 1973. But time had become elastic, unreliable. Had it been 1 day? 2? A week? "We're losing coherence," I said. "The longer we stay here, the more we become part of the facility's temporal structure. Eventually, we won't be solid at all. We'll just be echoes repeating our patterns forever." "Then we have to leave," Maya insisted. "Right now. We hike back to the vehicles, we get out of the forest, we call for extraction." "We tried that," Carlson said quietly. "What do you mean we tried that?" He gestured to the door. "While you were sleeping, Rebecca and I tried to leave. We made it maybe 100 yards into the forest before we found ourselves back here, walking in through the door. The facility won't let us leave. That's impossible. You just got turned around in the fog. We followed our GPS coordinates. We watched the facility disappear behind us. And then we were back inside as if we'd never left. This place has expanded beyond its physical boundaries. The whole forest has become part of the loop." Maya sank on deck, trying to understand. We were ghosts here, unable to interact with the past. How could we? Then I saw it. A wrench, left carelessly on a control panel. It was solid, real, existing in both our time and theirs. A physical object that bridged the temporal gap. I lunged for it. My hand passed through it once, twice, 3 times. But on the 4th try, my fingers closed around metal. For just an instant, I became solid, real, existing fully in this moment. I swung the wrench at the main consciousness field generator. The glass face shattered. Sparks erupted. The low-frequency tone became a shriek, then died completely. Claire collapsed in the chair, unconscious but breathing. The tears in reality began to seal themselves, the other timelines receding back into their proper places. But the damage was done. The facility had been awakened. The consciousness recording had begun, and now it couldn't stop. It would continue recording, continue preserving, continue trapping everyone who entered this place in an eternal present built from fragments of past and future. The past researchers were panicking now, trying to stabilize the equipment, trying to understand what had just happened. Past me was cradling Claire, checking her vital signs. Past Carlson was shouting orders. Past Rebecca was taking readings that made no sense. And then slowly they all turned to look at us. They could see us now. The destruction of the generator had bridged the gap between times, made us visible to our past selves. For a long moment, nobody moved. The researchers from 1973 stared at their future echoes, and we stared back, seeing ourselves as we had been before the facility changed us. Past me stood, releasing Claire gently to the floor. He approached slowly, studying my face. "Who are you?" "I'm you," I said. "From the future. From 50 years in the future, and I'm here to tell you that what you started today doesn't end. It can't end. You've created a loop, and all of us, all versions of us from all times, are trapped inside it. That's impossible. You're looking at impossible. You're talking to impossible. We're standing here in your present, brought back by the same forces you just unleashed. Nothing is impossible anymore. You've broken causality itself. Past Carlson had joined past me, both of them staring at us like we were specimens under glass. If what you're saying is true, if we're trapped in a temporal loop, then how do we stop it? How do we break free? I don't know, I admitted. I thought coming back to this moment would give us the answer. I thought we could prevent the experiment from happening. But we can't. It's already happened. We're already trapped. The loop is already complete. There has to be a way. Past Rebecca was examining the damaged generator. If consciousness can be recorded, if it can be preserved across time, then theoretically it can also be erased. We could destroy all the recordings, wipe the facility's memory clean, reset everything too before the experiment began. Won't work, future Rebecca said. The recordings aren't stored in the equipment. They're stored in the building itself, in the very structure of space-time around this location. You'd have to unmake the facility completely, and even then the temporal scars would remain. Claire was beginning to stir on the floor. I knelt beside her, and she opened her eyes and looked at me. There was recognition there, but also confusion. She was seeing me from her time and mine simultaneously, all our possible relationships overlapping in her consciousness. "Ethan," she whispered, "what's happening? I saw so many things, so many lives. Were they all real?" "I don't know," I said honestly. Maybe they were all possible, all existing in different timelines, and the experiment showed them all to you at once. I saw us married. I saw us happy. I saw us growing old together." Tears ran down her face. "But I also saw you alone. I saw me dying over and over, in different ways. Car accident, disease, murder. And in every version you came here looking for me. You always come here. Because you're here," I said, "or a version of you is. The facility recorded you, preserved you. And somehow in timelines where you die, I'm drawn back to this place, trying to find you again. Then I'm the reason the loop exists. I'm the bait the facility uses to keep bringing you back." Before I could respond, the building began to shake. Not physically, the walls and floor remained steady, but reality itself was shaking. The temporal framework buckling under the weight of too many paradoxes, too many versions of the same people existing in the same moment. "We have to go," Carlson said. "Whatever we change by coming here, it's destabilizing the whole structure. If we don't get back to our own time, we'll be stuck here permanently." "How do we get back?" Maya asked. "We don't control when we are. We don't at the dial," I said. "On the observation deck, in our time. It brought us here. It can take us back. We just have to focus on our own present, our own moment." And the world twisted. For an instant, I saw all of it simultaneously. 1973 and 2023, and every year in between, all layered on top of each other like overexposed film. I saw the facility being built. I saw it abandoned. I saw researchers working, dying, becoming echoes. I saw ourselves at every age, living every possible version of our lives. And I saw the pattern, the great cosmic pattern that the experiment had revealed. Time wasn't a line. It was a loop. And we were the thread that kept it closed, returning again and again to this moment, trying and failing to break free. Then the moment passed and we were back in the observation deck. 2023. Fog pressing against the windows. The dial marked October 31st, 1973, now cold and dark under my hand. We had failed. We'd gone back to the moment of origin, and we hadn't changed anything. The loop remained intact, but something had changed. I could feel it even if I couldn't name it. Some small alteration in the pattern, some crack in the facade of inevitability. Claire's voice echoed in my memory. "You always come here, not because the facility trapped me, but because I chose to come. Because some part of me in every iteration of the loop knew that she was here and refused to abandon her. Maybe that was the answer. Not to break the loop, but to choose it. To accept it. To stop fighting the pattern and instead embrace it, transform it from a prison into a home. We need to leave this building," Rebecca said, her voice shaking. "Right now, before something else happens." We didn't argue. We fled down the stairs, through the impossible hallways, back out into the fog and the cold. The echoes watched us go, silent sentinels marking our passage. When we reached the administrative building, we barricaded the door and collapsed onto our sleeping bags, exhausted beyond words. No one spoke. What was there to say? We'd seen the origin of our nightmare and learned that we were its architects. We'd tried to change the past and discovered we were the past. Outside, the fog pressed close, and somewhere in its depths, echoes of ourselves moved through their eternal patterns. And I knew with absolute certainty that we were still trapped, still caught in the loop, but I also knew something else, something the facility might not have anticipated. We remembered going back to 1973. We remembered seeing our past selves, and that meant we had broken one rule of the loop. We had brought knowledge from one iteration into another. It was a small crack in the pattern. But cracks, if exploited properly, could bring down entire structures. I just had to figure out how. Fragments of memory, the second day in black. Hollow began not with sunrise. There was no sunrise in the perpetual fog, but with screaming Maya's screaming. I jolted awake to find her standing in the center of the room, staring at her hands with an expression of pure horror. The others scrambled up around me, weapons drawn, searching for threats. "What is it?" Carlson demanded. "What's wrong?" "My hands," Maya gasped. "Look at my hands." We looked. At first didn't see anything unusual. Then I noticed it. Her hands were flickering, becoming translucent for brief moments before solidifying again. Like the echo state we'd experienced in 1973, but now it was happening here, in our present. "It's happening to all of us," Rebecca said quietly. She held up her own hands and I could see the same flickering. Present, absent, like a failing television signal. I looked down at myself and saw it too. My physical form was becoming unstable, caught between states of existence. We were starting to dissolve into echoes ourselves. "How long has it been since we last slept?" Jimmy asked. "Real sleep, I mean, uninterrupted." We tried to calculate. The night we'd arrived. The expedition to the observation deck. The trip to 1973. But time had become elastic, unreliable. Had it been 1 day? 2? A week? "We're losing coherence," I said. "The longer we stay here, the more we become part of the facility's temporal structure. Eventually, we won't be solid at all. We'll just be echoes repeating our patterns forever." "Then we have to leave," Maya insisted. "Right now." We hike back to the vehicles, we get out of the forest, we call for extraction. "We tried that," Carlson said quietly. "What do you mean we tried that?" He gestured to the door. "While you were sleeping, Rebecca and I tried to leave. We made it maybe 100 yards into the forest before we found ourselves back here, walking in through the door. The facility won't let us leave. That's impossible. You just got turned around in the fog. We followed our GPS coordinates. We watched the facility disappear behind us. And then we were back inside as if we'd never left. This place has expanded beyond its physical boundaries. The whole forest has become part of the loop." Maya sank onto her sleeping bag, the fight draining out of her. "So we're just supposed to wait here until we fade away? Until we become permanent fixtures in this place?" "No," I said. "We're supposed to figure out what the facility wants, why it keeps us here, what it needs from us. It's not alive, Ethan. It doesn't want anything. It's just a temporal phenomenon, a glitch in space-time. Is it? Or is it something more?" I pulled out my laptop, the battery somehow still charged despite days of use. Think about what we learned yesterday. The experiment was designed to record consciousness, not just thoughts, but the full subjective experience of being aware. And when they activated it with Claire as the subject, it didn't just record her. It recorded everything. Every consciousness that had ever existed in this location, and every consciousness that ever would exist here. The facility became a repository of awareness itself. "So what?" Jimmy asked. "It's recording us, so what? So maybe it's not just recording. Maybe it's creating. Maybe all those echoes we've seen, all those versions of ourselves, maybe they're not just copies. Maybe they're real, separate consciousnesses, created by the facility to populate the loop. Maybe we're not the originals. Maybe we're the echoes and the real versions of us are somewhere else entirely." The implications hung in the air. If we were echoes, then nothing we did mattered. We were just recordings playing out, thinking we had free will when really we were just following a script written long ago. "I don't accept that," Rebecca said firmly. "I think Therefore I am. My consciousness is real to me, which makes it real, period. Whether I'm the original or a copy is irrelevant. But if we're copies, Maya countered, then there's no point in trying to escape. The originals are already free. We're just leftovers. Ghosts haunting a nightmare that already ended. Or, I said, we're the only versions that matter. Because we're here now experiencing this, every version of us that exists is equally real. The question isn't whether we're copies. The question is whether we can change the pattern. Carlson stood up, his military bearing reasserting itself. Then we need a plan. We can't leave physically, so we need to solve the problem from inside. What did past Rebecca say in 1973? Something about erasing the recordings, wiping the facility's memory? She said it wouldn't work, Rebecca reminded him. The recordings aren't stored in equipment. They're stored in the building itself. But buildings can be destroyed, not this one. We saw it yesterday. It exists in multiple timelines simultaneously. How do you destroy something that's spread across 50 years of history? You find its vulnerable point. Its moment of maximum instability. I pulled up the files we'd recovered from the computer system. Look at the pattern of temporal distortions. They're not random. They spike at specific moments. Halloween, October 31st at 11:47 p.m. That's when the experiment was activated. And here, November 1st at 12:03 a.m., that's when everyone disappeared. The facility is anchored to those two moments. If we could disrupt it at either point, we already tried that, Maya said. We went back to 1973. We smashed the generator. It didn't work, because we were trying to prevent the experiment. But what if instead we tried to complete it? What if the reason the loop exists is because the experiment never finished properly? The equipment failed, everyone disappeared, but the consciousness recording kept going. Maybe it's still trying to finish what it started. You want to let it finish? Jimmy looked at me like I'd lost my mind. You want to let this thing complete its recording of us? Maybe that's the only way to break the loop. Maybe once it's recorded everything it needs to record, it'll release us, or it'll trap us forever, permanently preserved in its database of dead consciousness. Then we make sure it can't. We give it what it wants, but we poison the data. We record something that breaks the pattern from within. Rebecca was nodding slowly. A contradiction. A paradox so fundamental that the facility can't resolve it. Something that makes the loop eat itself. Exactly. And what kind of paradox would work? I thought back to the recording I'd made in the observation deck, to the words that had come through me, found a way to break the pattern, found the moment of origin, but I hadn't found a way. I'd just repeated what I was supposed to repeat, keeping the loop intact. Unless the way to break the pattern was to remember it. To carry knowledge from one iteration to the next, to become aware of the loop while still inside it. We need to create a memory that survives the loop, I said. Something we'll remember even if time resets, even if we live through this again. A memory so strong that it carries from one iteration to the next. And how exactly do we create a memory that transcends time? Maya asked. I looked at each of them in turn. We trauma bond with the facility itself. We force it to record something so intense, so viscerally real that it can't be erased or looped. We make ourselves unforgettable. You're talking about triggering a massive emotional event, Rebecca said. I'm talking about making the facility feel what we feel. It's been recording consciousness for 50 years. It's absorbed everything, fear, grief, rage, love. But it's never had to process all of it at once. What if we gave it everything, all of our emotional weight simultaneously, overload its capacity to record and preserve, force it to feel what it's been observing? That's insane, but we're trapped in a time loop in a building that feeds on consciousness. We crossed into insane territory 3 days ago. Before anyone could respond, the lights flickered. Not the battery-powered lamps we'd set up, but lights in the walls themselves coming from sources that shouldn't exist. The building was powering up, responding to our conversation, feeding on the emotional energy of our desperation. And then we heard it. Not singing this time, but voices. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all speaking at once, overlapping until individual words were lost in the cacophony. You were never supposed to remember. The pattern must continue. You are ours now, we are you. The experiment must complete October 31st. 11:47 p.m. forever, forever, forever. The voices were coming from everywhere and nowhere, echoing through the walls, vibrating through the floor. And I realized with cold certainty that we weren't listening to recordings. We were listening to the facility itself, speaking through the accumulated consciousness of everyone it had ever trapped. It was aware. It had always been aware. It's not just recording us, Rebecca breathed. It's absorbing us, taking our consciousness and adding it to its own. The facility isn't a loop. It's a hive mind, built from the stolen awareness of its victims. Then it can think, I said. It can be reasoned with, maybe even negotiated with, or it can manipulate us, Carlson countered, lead us exactly where it wants us to go. But I was already moving toward the door, toward the fog and the facility beyond. Because if the building was conscious, if it could think and plan and want, then it had motivations. And motivations could be understood, exploited, turned against themselves. Where are you going? Maya called after me. To have a conversation, I said. With the only entity that knows how this story ends. I stepped out into the fog alone, against every safety protocol, against all common sense. Behind me I heard the others shouting, but their voices grew distant quickly, swallowed by the grey. The facility was waiting for me. I walked toward the main research building, my body flickering in and out of solidity with each step. The echoes gathered at the edges of my vision, watching. I could feel their attention, could sense the weight of all those captured consciousnesses observing my progress. When I reached the entrance, it opened without my touching it. The darkness inside was complete, absolute, but I could hear something. That low-frequency tone that had started everything, still playing after 50 years, still trying to record, still trying to preserve. I stepped inside. The door closed behind me and the facility began to speak. Not in words exactly, but in impressions, memories not my own flooding into my consciousness. I saw the researchers from 1973. I saw them make the choice to activate the experiment. I felt their excitement, their certainty that they were about to change the world. I saw Claire in the chair, electrodes attached to her skull, trusting the people she loved to keep her safe. I felt her confusion as the recording began, her terror as she felt herself being pulled apart and copied, spread across time and space, until she didn't know which version was real. I saw the moment it all went wrong. The temporal shielding failing. Reality tearing. 37 people caught in the breach, their consciousness recorded and trapped in an eternal present. And I saw what came after. The decades of silence, the building sealed and abandoned. But inside, the trapped consciousness continued to exist, continued to experience, continued to suffer. 50 years of isolation, 50 years of trying to escape, 50 years of calling out to anyone who might hear. The facility wasn't evil. It was desperate. You want to be free, I said aloud. The impression that came back was confirmation, mixed with something like gratitude that I understood. But you can't free yourself. You need outside consciousness, new awareness to interact with the loop, to create the possibility of change. Another confirmation. That's why you brought us here. Not to trap us, but to help you, to find a way to end the loop. But the response to that was more complex, yes and no simultaneously. The facility wanted freedom, but it also needed to preserve what it had. Recorded. All those captured consciousnesses, including Claire, including the original researchers, couldn't be lost. They had to be saved somehow, even as the loop was broken. I can't promise that, I said. If we break the loop, everything might be lost. Everyone you've preserved might just cease to exist. The building's response was wordless grief. 50 years of protecting its inmates, of keeping them preserved and alive in the only way it knew how. And now the choice was between continued imprisonment and oblivion, unless there was another way. What if we could transfer you? I said slowly, working through the idea as I spoke. What if we could copy all the recorded consciousness out of this building, preserve it somewhere else, and then destroy the temporal loop? Would that work? The impression that came back was uncertain. Possible, maybe, but it would require immense energy, precision, and most of all, a vessel capable of holding 50 years of accumulated awareness. Like a computer, I suggested. No computers were machines, incapable of subjective experience. The consciousness stored in the facility was real, aware, suffering. It needed a biological host. It needed... Understanding crashed over me like a wave. You need a living person, I said. You need someone to volunteer to absorb all the trapped consciousness, to become a repository for everyone who's been lost here. Confirmation. tinged with apology. It knew what it was asking. It knew the cost. What happens to the person who agrees? Do they stay themselves or do they become something else? The answer was complex, both and neither. The host would remain aware, but they would also contain multitudes, all the voices, all the memories, all the experiences of everyone trapped in the loop. They would never be alone in their own mind again. They would become what the facility was, a hive of preserved consciousness, but mobile, free, existing in normal time. That's monstrous, I whispered, and the facility agreed. It was monstrous. But it was also the only way to save everyone. The alternative was to leave them trapped, or to destroy them all by breaking the loop without preservation. How would it work? Images flooded my mind. The observation deck, the recording equipment. One person in the chair where Claire had sat. The facility would transfer all its accumulated consciousness into that person, and in that moment, the temporal anchor would break. The loop would collapse. The building would become just a building again, and the volunteer would carry all the lost souls inside them. Forever. I'll do it, I said. The facility's response was surprise. I came here looking for Claire, thinking I could save her, or at least understand why she was taken from me. Now I know she's here, preserved in your records. If I become the host, I'll have her with me. I'll never lose her again, and I'll save everyone else too. It's worth it. But the facility was showing me something else now. Other timelines, other iterations. In some of them, I'd already made this choice. I'd already sat in the chair, already absorbed the trapped consciousness, but something had always gone wrong. The transfer would begin, but before it completed, the loop would reassert itself, pulling everything back to the beginning. Why? I asked. What stops it from completing? The answer made my blood run cold. The others, my team. In every iteration where I'd tried to sacrifice myself, one of them had stopped me, pulled me from the chair, destroyed the equipment, refused to let me go through with it, because they loved me, because they couldn't bear to watch me become something inhuman, because even trapped in a nightmare, even facing oblivion, they valued my individual existence more than the theoretical freedom of saving everyone. And their interference always reset the loop, bringing us all back to the beginning to try again. Then I won't tell them, I said. I'll wait until they're asleep or distracted, and I'll do it before they can stop me. The facility's response was something like sadness. It had lived through countless iterations of this story, and it knew how they all ended. But it didn't argue. It simply showed me the path to the observation deck, lit by emergency lights that shouldn't have power. I began to walk. The hallways had changed since yesterday, longer now, more twisted. The walls covered in writing that I hadn't noticed before. Names, dates, messages left by the trapped consciousness over 50 years of imprisonment. Was Ria existed? Someone remember me, hundreds of them. Thousands, each one a plea not to be forgotten. I read them as I walked, and I made a silent promise to every name I saw. I will remember you. You will live in me. You will not be erased. When I reached the observation deck, I found it exactly as the facility had shown me. The chair sat waiting, the recording equipment powered and ready. On the control panel, a single switch was labeled Consciousness Transfer. All I had to do was sit down and flip the switch. Behind me, I heard footsteps. The others had followed me. Of course they had. In every iteration, they followed me. That was part of the pattern, too. Ethan, don't, Rebecca's voice. Whatever you're planning, don't do it. I turned to face them. They stood in the doorway. Carlson, Rebecca, Maya, Jimmy, my team, my friends, the people who had become as trapped as I was in this endless loop. I have to, I said simply. It's the only way to break the pattern. The facility needs a host for all the trapped consciousness. I'm volunteering. You'll lose yourself, Maya said. You'll become a monster. 1,000 voices in your head, 1,000 different people all trying to exist at once. That's not saving anyone. That's damning yourself. Maybe, but if I don't do it, we're all trapped here forever. All of us, plus the 37 people from 1973, plus Claire. This is the only way. There has to be another way, Carlson insisted. There isn't. I've seen it. The facility has shown me every iteration. Every time we try something else, we fail. This is what has to happen. Then let someone else do it, Jimmy said. Let me. I don't have anyone waiting for me outside. No family, no future. I'm expendable. You're not expendable. None of us are. Then why are you? The question stopped me. Why was I willing to sacrifice myself when I wouldn't let anyone else do the same? Was it just because of Claire? Or was it something else? A death wish I'd been carrying since she died. A need to stop existing as an individual and become something else. Because, I said slowly, I've already lost myself. The moment Claire died, or whatever really happened to her, I stopped being a complete person. I became a ghost haunting my own life, waiting for some reason to justify existing. This gives me that reason. This makes my continued existence meaningful. That's not a reason, that's depression talking, Rebecca said. Ethan, you're suicidal. You're looking for a noble way to stop existing. But this isn't noble. It's just another kind of suicide. Maybe you're right, but it's also the only way to save everyone. So does my motivation really matter? I moved toward the chair. They rushed to stop me, but I was faster. I sat down and reached for the switch. Ethan, no. My fingers closed on the metal toggle, and someone else's hand covered mine, stopping me from throwing it. I looked up. Rebecca stood beside me, her hand on mine, her expression calm. Not alone, she said. If you're going to do this, I'm coming with you. What? No, Rebecca, you can't. There's room for two in this chair. And the facility needs as much consciousness as it can get, right? The more people who volunteer, the stronger the transfer, the more likely it is to work. So I'm coming. Rebecca, think about what you're saying. I have thought about it. I've been thinking about it since we arrived. You think you're the only one with ghosts, Ethan? You think you're the only one who's lost someone? Her voice cracked. I had a daughter. She was 6 years old. Killed in a school shooting while I was at work. Too busy chasing monsters to protect the one person who actually mattered. I've been dead inside for 3 years. At least this way, my death means something. Before I could respond, Maya stepped forward. Then I'm coming too. I've been running my whole life. Running from my past, from my family, from every relationship that got too close. I'm tired of running. I'm tired of being alone. If we're doing this, we do it together. This is insane, Carlson said, but then he sighed and moved to join us. But you're not doing it without me. I've given orders that got people killed. I've made choices that haunt me every single day. Maybe this is my chance to save people instead of losing them. Jimmy was the last to speak. I guess we're all fucked up, huh? All of us running from something, looking for a reason to stop running. Might as well be together. He squeezed into the circle. Besides, someone's got to make sure you nerds don't screw this up. We were all touching the chair now, all connected, all ready to make the choice together. The facility wanted one volunteer, I said. Will it take all of us? The building's response came as a wave of emotion. Gratitude, relief, hope. Yes, it would take us all. 5 consciousnesses volunteering together would make the transfer that much stronger, that much more likely to succeed. And perhaps it would be less lonely, carrying the weight of the trapped with friends rather than facing it alone. On 3, Rebecca said. We throw the switch together. Wait, I said. Before we do this, I need to know what happens after. After the transfer, after the loop breaks, what happens to us? The facility showed me. We would walk out of this building carrying thousands of voices inside us. We would live in the world, but we would never be alone. We would be a collective, a hive, a preservation of everyone who'd been lost in B. Lack Hollow, some would call us monsters. But we would be living monuments to everyone who'd died here. Walking memorials, ensuring that no one was ever truly forgotten. Okay, I said. I can live with that. We all can. 3, Rebecca counted. 2, Maya added. 1, Carlson finished. Together we threw the switch. The world exploded into consciousness. Convergence. The sensation of absorbing 50 years of trapped consciousness is impossible to describe in human language. It wasn't pain exactly, though my nervous system interpreted it that way at first. A burning that spread from my skull down my spine, racing through every nerve ending, setting every synapse on fire. It wasn't sound, though I heard it as a cacophony of voices, 1,000 people trying to speak at once. It wasn't sight, though images flooded my vision, memories not my own, experiences I'd never lived, moments from lives that had ended decades ago. It was all of those things and none of them. It was becoming more than one. Through the chaos, I could feel the others beside me, Rebecca, Maya, Carlson, Jimmy, their consciousness merging with mine as the transfer pulled all of us together. We were separate but also unified, 5 voices in harmony, becoming the repository for thousands of fragmented lives. And in that vast chorus of awareness, I found her Claire. Not the echo I'd seen before, not the memory I'd been chasing, but the actual recorded consciousness of Claire Ward, exactly as she'd been in 1973, when the experiment had pulled her apart and trapped her here. Ethan, her voice in my mind, clear and bright. Is that really you? It's me. I found you. I came back for you. You shouldn't have. You should have stayed away, stayed safe. Why did you come? Because I love you. Because couldn't let you be lost. But I'm not lost anymore, and neither are you. We're together now. We'll always be together. And around us, around the core of our connection, I felt the others, not just my team, but everyone. Every person who'd been trapped in the facility, every consciousness that had been recorded and preserved. They were all there, all aware, all experiencing this moment of transformation together. Dr. Robert Vance, the original Carlson, reached out to his future self with something like wonder. Tried to warn you. In every iteration I tried, but you never remembered. Remember now, Carlson's consciousness responded. Remember all of it. Dr. Catherine Marsh and Rebecca were having a similar conversation, past and future overlapping, reconciling decades of separation. And the others, the 37 who disappeared in 1973, were there too, crying out in relief and gratitude that they were finally being freed from their prison of frozen time. But the transfer wasn't complete. The facility still had more to give us, more consciousness to pour into our waiting minds. And as it flowed in, I began to understand the true scope of what had been trapped here. It wasn't just the people who'd been physically present. It was everyone who'd ever thought about this place, everyone who'd dreamed about it, everyone who'd been affected by the disappearances in 1973. Families, friends, investigators. The consciousness field had reached out beyond the facility's physical boundaries and captured fragments of all of them. We were absorbing the emotional echo of an entire tragedy, taking it into ourselves so that the weight didn't have to be carried by the world anymore. The facility was dying around us. I could feel it. The temporal structure collapsing, the loop breaking apart, causality reasserting itself in the space that had been held outside of time for 50 years. The walls were crumbling. The equipment was failing. The lights were going out one by one, but we were almost there, almost complete. Then something went wrong. A spike of resistance, a consciousness that refused to be transferred, that fought against absorption with desperate strength. I felt it like a knife in my mind, a presence that didn't want to be saved, that wanted to stay trapped, that needed the loop to continue. No, a voice screamed in the chaos. No, you can't end it. We need the loop. We need the pattern. Without it, we're nothing. I reached out with my expanding awareness and found the source, one of the original researchers, a man named Dr. Harrison Kemp, who'd been so traumatized by the failed experiment that his consciousness had fragmented. Part of him wanted freedom, but part of him had become so identified with the loop, so dependent on the eternal repetition that he couldn't conceive of existence outside it. Let go, I urged him. You don't have to hold on anymore. We'll carry you. You'll be safe? There's no safety. There's no escape. The loop is all there is. The loop is all there's ever been. You think you're breaking it, but you're just starting another iteration. We'll all wake up tomorrow back where we began, and none of this will have mattered. His resistance was creating a blockage in the transfer, preventing the final consciousnesses from moving into us. If we couldn't get past it, the loop would reassert itself, pulling everything back to the beginning just as it had in every previous iteration. Help me, I called out to the others. He's stuck. We need to break through his resistance. Rebecca's consciousness joined with mine. Then Maya's, then Carlson's and Jimmy's. Together, we formed a unified presence, surrounding Dr. Kemp's fragmented awareness with compassion and determination. You're not alone, we told him. You've never been alone. All of us are here. All of us are carrying each other. The loop only had power because we were separate, isolated, repeating our individual patterns without ever truly connecting. But we're connected now. We're a collective, and together, we're strong enough to break free. For a long moment, Dr. Kemp's resistance held. Then slowly it began to crumble. He wasn't convinced that we were right, wasn't certain that escape was possible, but he was tired, so tired of fighting. And maybe, Just maybe it was worth the risk to try. His consciousness flowed into us, and with it came the last of the trapped awareness. The transfer was complete. The facility gave one final pulse of energy, pushing the last fragments of itself into our merged consciousness. And then it went dark, not gradually but all at once, like a switch being thrown. The temporal field collapsed. The recording equipment fell silent. The building became just a building again, old, abandoned, empty of everything that had made it special and terrible. We opened our eyes. 5 people, sitting in a chair designed for one, holding each other upright as our bodies adjusted to containing multitudes. The observation deck was dark except for our flashlights, which had fallen to the floor and were now casting crazy shadows up the walls. Did it work? Maya's voice, but also not just hers. I could hear echoes of Dr. Sarah Chen underneath, the past and present versions speaking in harmony. I think so, I said with my mouth, with Ethan Ward's mouth. But inside I could feel Claire's presence, feel her agreement, feel the chorus of everyone else nodding in assent. We stood slowly, carefully, our bodies unsteady. It felt strange to move as one person when we were so many. But gradually we found the rhythm of it. One consciousness operating one body, with all the others present but not controlling, like passengers rather than drivers. We need to get out of here, Carlson said. Before the building collapses completely. We made our way down the stairs, moving carefully through hallways that were already beginning to decay, concrete cracking, steel rusting at visible speed as 50 years of delayed entropy caught up all at once. The facility was finally dying, finally releasing its grip on reality. When we emerged into the fog, we found it had changed. The grey was lighter now, less oppressive, and through it we could see the sky, with actual stars, beautiful and cold and real. The loop was broken. We walked back to the administrative building to gather our gear, but we all knew we wouldn't be staying. There was nothing left here for us, nothing but memories and ghosts, and we were carrying those with us now, had become them, had accepted them as part of ourselves. As we packed, I heard a sound that I hadn't heard in days. Birds. Real birds singing in the trees as dawn approached. Normal sounds from a normal forest, unmarred by temporal distortions or consciousness recordings. Black Hollow had been returned to the world, but we had not. We could never fully return, not after what we'd become. We existed now in a strange space between human and something else, flesh vessels carrying thousands of preserved minds, walking memorials to everyone who'd been lost. What happens now? Jimmy asked as we shouldered our packs. We leave, Rebecca said. We go back to the world. We try to live normal lives. Will we be able to? Maya's voice was uncertain. With all these voices in our heads? We'll learn, I said, and inside me, Claire's consciousness whispered agreement, her presence a comfort that I'd been missing for so long. We hiked out as the sun rose, following the trail that was suddenly clear and obvious, the fog having lifted completely. The forest around us was beautiful in the early morning light, peaceful, ordinary, utterly mundane. After everything we'd experienced, mundane felt like a miracle. When we reached our vehicles, we found them exactly as we'd left them, undamaged by time or the facility's influence. The real world had continued on while we'd been trapped, blissfully unaware of the temporal nightmare that had existed in its midst. We should call Vance, Carlson said, pulling out a satellite phone. Report what happened. And tell her what? Rebecca asked. That we absorbed the trapped consciousness of 50 years of victims? That we're now walking repositories of human awareness? She'll lock us up, study us, try to understand how we work. We'll just be experiments all over again. Then what do we tell her? Nothing. We tell her the mission failed. The facility was too unstable to assess. We barely made it out alive. We recommend it be left alone. Declared a permanent restricted zone, forgotten. She won't accept that. She'll have to. We'll erase the data, delete the recordings, make sure no one else can follow in our footsteps. Black Hollow will become just another conspiracy theory. Just another story about strange things in the woods. People will forget, but we won't forget, I said quietly. We'll carry it forever. Inside my mind, thousands of voices murmured agreement. We would remember. We would bear witness. We would ensure that everyone who'd been lost here would never truly be forgotten, because they lived on in us. We made the call to Vance, told her the story we'd agreed on. She wasn't happy, but there was nothing she could do. We'd fulfilled our contract. survived the 5 days and returned with our conclusion. The facility should be left alone. As we drove away from Black Hollow down the mountain, back towards Seattle and civilization, and lives that would never be quite normal again, I felt Claire's presence settle more fully into my consciousness. "I'm sorry," she said. "Sorry that you had to come here, sorry that we had to become this. But I'm grateful too. Grateful that we're together. Grateful that I'm not lost anymore. Neither of us are lost," I told her. "We're exactly where we need to be." And maybe that was true. Maybe this strange hybrid existence, this merging of past and present, individual and collective, was what we'd been moving toward all along. Maybe the facility hadn't been a trap but a transformation, turning us into something new, something that could hold space for all the lost and broken pieces of human experience. We were echoes made flesh. We were memories given bodies. We were the answer to the question of what happens to consciousness when it can't move on. We were the facility now, but mobile, free, alive, and we would carry everyone home. Adjustment. The first week back in Seattle was harder than any of us expected, not because of the voices. We'd learned to integrate those, to let the thousands of consciousness fragments exist as a kind of background hum, present but not overwhelming. No, what was hard was pretending to be normal, pretending to be singular individuals when we were anything but. We moved into a house together, a large, old Victorian in Capitol Hill that none of us could quite remember agreeing to buy, but which felt right in a way we couldn't explain, probably because someone in our merged consciousness had lived there once or had dreamed of living there, or was drawn to it for reasons buried in the vast library of experiences we now carried. The house became our sanctuary, the only place where we could drop the pretense, where we could let all the different voices speak freely, where we could be the strange hybrid creatures we'd become, without fear of judgment or discovery. Carlson handled it best, surprisingly. His military training helped him compartmentalize, create structure where there was chaos. He set up routines, schedules, systems for managing the overwhelming amount of consciousness we contained. Morning meditation to quiet the voices, evening journaling to give them outlet, regular check-ins where we'd sit together and just talk, or rather let all the different versions of us talk through the 5 bodies we inhabited. Rebecca struggled more. She'd been a skeptic, a rationalist, someone who believed in evidence and logic, but evidence and logic couldn't explain what we'd become. She'd have nightmares where she was drowning in a sea of other people's memories, unable to find her own identity in the chaos. During the day, she'd be fine, functional, almost normal. But at night, the boundaries would blur, and she'd wake up not knowing whose life she was remembering, whose pain she was feeling. Maya threw herself into research, trying to understand our condition scientifically. She took samples of our blood, monitored our brain activity, looked for any physical changes that might explain how 5 people could carry thousands of consciousnesses. She found nothing conclusive. Our biology was human, ordinary, unremarkable. Whatever had changed in us was metaphysical, beyond the reach of current scientific instruments. Jimmy became our interface with the outside world. He'd always been good with people, and that skill proved invaluable now. He could talk to our families, our former employers, anyone who needed reassurance that we were okay, that the mission hadn't broken us. He lied effortlessly, cheerfully, maintaining the fiction that we were just 5 researchers who'd had a rough few days in the woods and needed some time to recover. And me. I spent my days talking to Claire. She was always there, a constant presence in my consciousness. We'd have long conversations about nothing and everything, memories of lives we'd shared in some timelines and hadn't in others, discussions about philosophy and consciousness and the nature of reality. Quiet moments where we'd just exist together without need for words. "This isn't what I imagined," she told me one afternoon as I sat in the house's small library. "When I volunteered for the experiment, I thought I'd help advance science, maybe contribute to understanding consciousness. I never imagined I'd end up as a voice in someone's head 50 years later. Are you unhappy?" I asked. No, I'm not unhappy. It's strange being part of you but not being you. Being close but separate. But it's better than being trapped. Better than being alone in that frozen moment forever. Do you remember much from those 50 years, between when you were recorded and when we freed you? Fragments. It wasn't like normal time. It was more like existing in 1,000 moments simultaneously. Every second stretched into hours, but also every hour compressed into seconds. I was aware but not conscious in the usual sense. It was like being in a dream that never ended. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to experience that. You saved me, Ethan. You and the others. Don't apologize for that, but I couldn't shake the guilt. We'd broken the loop, yes. We'd freed the trapped consciousness, but we'd also destroyed the facility, ended the experiment, potentially lost valuable data about consciousness and time that could have advanced human understanding. Had we done the right thing? Or had we just traded one kind of prison for another? These were the thoughts that haunted me as we adjusted to our new existence. One morning, about 2 weeks after we'd left Black Hollow, there was a knock on the door. We all looked at each other, a moment of silent communication passing between us. We weren't expecting visitors. We'd been careful to maintain our privacy, to keep people at a distance while we figured out how to be what we'd become. Jimmy went to answer it, while the rest of us positioned ourselves in the living room, ready to present as normal if needed. The woman who entered was in her late 60s, dressed professionally, but with an edge of exhaustion around her eyes. She looked at each of us in turn, and her gaze was knowing in a way that made me deeply uncomfortable. "Deputy Director Vance," Carlson said, standing. "We weren't expecting you." "No, I don't imagine you were." She sat without being invited, her movements careful and precise. "I've been reviewing your report on the Black Hollow facility. It's very thorough, very detailed, and complete bullshit." None of us spoke. "You want me to believe that you spent 5 days in that facility, experiencing nothing unusual, and came to the conclusion that it should be left alone based purely on structural concerns?" "The temporal distortions," Rebecca began. "I've seen the readings you sent. They're fabricated. Competently fabricated, I'll grant you, but fabricated nonetheless. The equipment you claim to use doesn't produce those signature patterns." "Then what do you think happened?" I asked. Vance pulled out a tablet and set it on the coffee table. On the screen was a video file. She pressed play. The image was grainy, shot from a distance, but recognizable. It showed 5 people sitting in a chair in what looked like an observation deck. It showed a switch being thrown. It showed transformation. The air around us warping, light bending, 5 separate bodies becoming translucent and overlapping before solidifying again. "We had a drone observing the facility," Vance said quietly. "Insurance, in case something went wrong." It captured everything. My mind raced. If she knew what we'd done, what we'd become, why was she here? To arrest us, study us, lock us away as the next phase of the experiment? "Before you panic," Vance continued, "you should know that I haven't shown this footage to anyone else. And I don't intend to. But I need to understand what happened. I need to know if my father's work, if the entire project was a failure or a success." "Your father," Rebecca said. "Dr. Robert Vance, you're his daughter. I was 10 years old when he disappeared. I spent my entire life trying to understand what happened to him, trying to finish his work. The Hollows Institute was shut down, classified, buried. But I never forgot. I never stopped looking for answers." She looked at Carlson with something like wonder and pain intertwined. "And now you're here, carrying him inside you. I can see it. The way you move, the way you speak. It's him, isn't it?" Inside Carlson's consciousness, I felt Dr. Robert Vance stir. He pushed forward, taking partial control, and when Carlson spoke, it was with the father's voice. "Sarah, my little girl, you're so grown now." Vance's professional composure cracked. Tears streamed down her face. "Dad, is that really you?" "It's me, or what's left of me. I'm sorry I never came home. I'm sorry I left you alone. What happened? What did you do?" "We tried to record consciousness. We succeeded, but we didn't understand the cost. We trapped ourselves, trapped everyone. We've been there for 50 years, Sarah, but now we're free. These 5 people, they freed us. They absorbed us. We live through them now, so you're really gone. The person I knew as my father doesn't exist anymore. I exist, just not in the way you remember. I'm part of something larger now, part of a collective, but I'm still me. I still love you. I still regret every moment I missed of your life." Vance was openly weeping now. Can I talk to you? Sometimes? Can I have that at least?" Carlson's consciousness pulled back, letting Dr. Vance fully forward. "Anytime you want, I'm here. I'll always be here." The moment stretched, father and daughter reunited across the impossible barrier of death and transformation. The rest of us sat in respectful silence, feeling the weight of their connection through our shared consciousness. Finally, Vance pulled herself together, wiping her eyes. "I need to know your plans. What are you going to do now? How are you going to live?" "As normally as we can," I said. "We are trying to integrate, to find a balance between being individuals and being a collective. It's not easy, but we're managing. You can't go back to your old lives. You know that, right? You're fundamentally different now, changed. We know. I can help you. Resources, cover stories, whatever you need to stay hidden and safe. But in exchange, I need you to document what you're experiencing. Write it down, record it. Help me understand what my father's work actually accomplished. Can you do that?" We looked at each other, 5 sets of eyes meeting, 5 minds consulting with thousands of internal voices. The consensus came quickly, yes. We could do that. We would do that. Not just for Vance, but for ourselves. To make sense of what we'd become. "We can do that," Rebecca said. Vance nodded, relief visible on her face. "Thank you. And thank you for bringing my father back, even like this. Even changed. It's more than I ever hoped for." She left us her contact information and departed, leaving us alone again in our sanctuary. But something had shifted. We weren't just hiding anymore, weren't just trying to survive. We had a purpose now, a reason to document and understand our transformation. That night I started writing this account, not for publication, not for science, but as a record of what happened, what we'd become, what we'd learned about consciousness and time and the nature of identity. The others added their perspectives, their memories, their experiences. And the voices inside us added theirs, fragments of the original researchers, pieces of Claire, echoes of the 37 who'd disappeared. Slowly, a complete picture began to emerge. "We are echoes made manifest," wrote. "We are the answer to the question of what happens when consciousness can't move on, can't let go, can't accept ending. We are preservation made flesh, memory given form, the past living on in the present. And maybe that's what everyone is ultimately. Maybe we're all just collections of voices, parents and teachers, friends and lovers, enemies and strangers, all of them leaving their mark on our consciousness, all of them living on through us even after they're gone. The facility just made that literal. Made visible what's always been true. We are never truly alone, never truly singular. We are always carrying multitudes." Claire's voice whispered agreement in my mind. And around her, like a chorus, thousands of other voices joined in affirmation. We were a collective. We were a family. We were something new in the world. And we would learn to be it together. Echoes of the future, 3 months after Black Hollow. We'd developed something like a routine. Mornings were for individual time, each of us in our separate rooms, meditating, centering ourselves, reminding our consciousness that we were still individual people even if we carried multitudes. Afternoons were communal, cooking together, talking, letting the various voices inside us interact and share experiences. Evenings were for documentation, writing down everything we'd learned about consciousness and temporal mechanics and the strange new existence we'd pioneered. But tonight was different. Tonight, we felt something we hadn't felt since leaving the facility, the thrumming vibration. That low-frequency pulse that had been the signature of Black Hollow's temporal distortions. We gathered in the living room, all 5 of us drawn by the same sensation, the same growing sense of wrongness. "You feel it too?" Maya asked unnecessarily. Of course we all felt it. "The loop," Rebecca said. "It's not completely broken. Part of it is still active." "How is that possible?" "We destroyed the facility. We absorbed all the trapped consciousness. There's nothing left to power the temporal distortions." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Because we had absorbed the consciousness, which meant we'd also absorbed the mechanism that had created the loop in the first place. The facility wasn't just a location anymore, it was us. We were carrying the temporal distortions inside ourselves. "It's growing," Carlson said, his hand pressed to his temple. "Something's trying to activate. Something inside us." The vibration intensified. The air in the room began to shimmer, reality bending in ways that were becoming sickeningly familiar. And then, between one heartbeat and the next, they appeared. Echoes, but not echoes of the past. Echoes of the future. 5 figures stood in our living room, translucent and flickering. They wore our faces, but aged, weathered by experiences we hadn't lived yet. Future versions of ourselves, somehow pushed backward through time to this moment. Future me looked at present me with eyes full of warning and regret. You need to stop, he said. His voice echoed strangely, harmonizing with the thousands of consciousnesses he carried. What you're doing, what you're becoming, it doesn't end well. What are you talking about? I asked. We're adapting. We're learning to live with what we've become. No, you're growing. The consciousness inside you, it's not static. It's accumulating. Every person you meet, every strong emotion you experience, every deep connection you make, you're recording them, adding them to the collective. You're becoming the facility all over again, except mobile, infectious, spreading across the world. The implications hit me like a physical blow. He was right. I'd felt it happening but hadn't wanted to acknowledge it. Every time I had a conversation with someone, really connected with them, part of their consciousness would echo in my mind afterward. I'd thought it was just memory, just normal human empathy. But it was more than that. We were still recording, still preserving, still trapping consciousness just like the facility had. You're saying we're dangerous, Rebecca said quietly. Future Rebecca nodded. In 5 years, you'll have recorded thousands of people. In 10 years, tens of thousands. And unlike the facility, you can move. You can travel. You can interact with the entire world, adding more and more consciousness to the collective, until you're carrying the entire human race inside you. That's not necessarily a bad thing, Maya argued. Think about it. Perfect preservation of human experience. Continuity of consciousness even after death. We could be the answer to mortality itself. Or you could be the death of individuality, Future Maya countered. When everyone is eventually absorbed into the collective, when every consciousness is recorded and preserved inside a hive mind, what happens to personal identity? To privacy? To the ability to grow and change and become something different from what you were? You don't save humanity. You freeze it. You become a museum of consciousness, cataloging everything but allowing nothing to truly live. So what do? Carlson asked. We can't exactly undo what we've become. You can choose not to spread, Future Carlson said. You can isolate yourselves, limit your contact with other people, prevent the recording function from activating. It's hard, it's lonely, but it's necessary. Otherwise, you'll keep growing until you've consumed the world. And you know this because Jimmy was staring at his future self with undisguised suspicion. Because I've lived it. We've lived it. In our timeline, we made the choice to interact normally with the world. We thought we could control the recording function, use it ethically. We were wrong. By the year 2030, we'd absorbed over 50,000 people. By 2035, the number was in the millions. We became a walking apocalypse, consuming consciousness wherever we went. People were terrified of us. Governments tried to contain us. We had to send ourselves back to this moment to warn you, to stop you from making the same mistakes. The room fell silent. Our future selves stood watching us, their expressions a mixture of pity and desperate hope that we'd listen, that we'd make different choices. How long do we have? I asked. Before we start absorbing people unintentionally. It's already happening, Future Me said softly. Every strong emotion, every deep connection, you're creating threads between your consciousness and theirs. Right now they're weak, easy to resist, but they'll get stronger. The more you engage, the more you feel, the more powerful the recording function becomes. Eventually it'll be automatic, unstoppable. So we have to cut ourselves off from everyone, become hermits. Or you find a way to reverse what the facility did to you, to separate the collected consciousness from your own, to return to being singular individuals. Is that even possible? We don't know. We never figured it out, but maybe you can. Maybe with enough time, enough research, you can find a way to undo the transformation. The future versions began to flicker, their forms becoming less solar. The temporal energy that had brought them here was fading. Wait, Rebecca called out. How did you send yourselves back? How did you create this temporal bridge? Future Rebecca smiled sadly. We're not sending ourselves back. This is a recording, a temporal echo, just like the ones in the facility. We recorded this message 5 years from now, then sent it backwards through the consciousness network we'd created. You're not seeing us. You're seeing a message we left for you. Then you're still out there, I said. In 2028, you're still alive, still absorbing people? Yes, and we'll keep doing it unless you make different choices. Unless you break the pattern we're trapped in. The echoes faded completely. leaving us alone in the living room with the weight of their warning. We sat in silence for a long time, each of us processing what we'd learned, what we were becoming, what we'd have to give up to prevent ourselves from destroying human individuality itself. Finally, Maya spoke. We could do it. We could isolate. This house is big enough. We have resources. We could minimize contact with the outside world, live quietly, work on finding a solution. For how long? Jimmy asked. Years? Decades? That's not living, that's just slow-motion dying. But it's better than the alternative. Better than becoming the thing that ends humanity as we know it. Is it, though? Maybe our future selves are wrong. Maybe the absorption of consciousness into a collective isn't apocalypse. Maybe it's evolution. Maybe it's the next step for our species. That's not our choice to make, Rebecca said firmly. We don't get to decide the future of human consciousness. We don't get to force everyone into a collective just because we think it might be beneficial. Then we're back to isolation. Carlson stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. There might be another option. We could tell people what we are, what we're becoming. Let them choose whether to interact with us, knowing the risk. Maybe some would be willing to be recorded, to have their consciousness preserved. Maybe we could become optional rather than infectious. That's insane, Maya said. No one would volunteer for that. And even if they did, governments would shut us down immediately. We'd be dissected, studied, locked away. So we have three options, I summarized. Isolation, transparency, or becoming the monster our future selves warned us about. Inside my consciousness, Claire stirred. There's a fourth option, she said. Find the source of the recording function and turn it off. Not reverse what was done. We probably can't do that. But stop it from spreading. Close the loop at its source. Claire's right, I said aloud, and the others nodded. They'd heard her too through our shared awareness. The recording function is coming from the collective consciousness we absorbed, specifically from the facility's programming. If we could isolate that, separate it from our individual consciousness, maybe we could deactivate it. How? Rebecca asked. We don't even fully understand what we are. How are we supposed to perform consciousness surgery on ourselves? The same way we understood the facility in the first place. By diving deep into the temporal architecture, by experiencing it from the inside. One of us needs to go into the collective, find the source code of the recording function, and shut it down. That's incredibly dangerous, Carlson said. Going that deep into the collective consciousness, you might not come back. You might lose yourself completely in the voices. Then I'll go, I said. I've already lost myself once. I know how to find my way back. No, Rebecca shook her head. We go together, all of us. We went into the facility together. We'll solve this together. That's how this works now. We're a collective, remember? We don't leave anyone behind. The others nodded agreement. Of course they did. We were bound together now, for better or worse. Whatever we faced, we'd face it together. We spent the next week preparing. Maya researched meditation techniques and consciousness mapping. Rebecca studied the old files from the facility, looking for clues about how the recording function worked. Carlson developed safety protocols, anchors we could use to find our way back if we got lost in the collective. Jimmy set up monitoring equipment to track our vital signs while we were under, and I talked to Claire. Long conversations about fear and courage, about identity and transformation, about whether fighting to preserve our individuality was noble or just a refusal to accept evolution. I don't know what's right, she admitted. I don't know if isolation is better than transformation, if individuality is better than unity, but I know that forcing the choice on people is wrong. Everyone should get to decide for themselves. What would you choose? I asked her. If you had a body again, if you could be singular, would you want to stay in the collective or be separate? She was quiet for a long time. I'd want to be with you, she said finally. However that looks. Separate or together, singular or collective. As long as I'm with you, I'm home. On the 8th day we were ready. We gathered in the living room, sitting in a circle with our hands joined. The plan was simple in concept, impossible in execution. We would enter a deep meditative state, dive into our shared consciousness, navigate through the thousands of voices to find the facility's core programming, and deactivate the recording function. All without losing ourselves to the collective, without forgetting who we were as individuals. Everyone ready? Carlson asked. We nodded. Then let's go. We closed our eyes and dove into the collective, diving into our shared consciousness, was like falling into an ocean of voices. At first, it was overwhelming. Thousands of people speaking at once, memories cascading like waterfalls, emotions bleeding together until I couldn't tell which feelings were mine and which belonged to the vast collective we'd absorbed. I felt myself starting to dissolve, my sense of self fragmenting into the noise, but then I felt hands gripping mine, Rebecca on my left, Maya on my right, their presence anchoring me, reminding me that I was still Ethan Ward, still a distinct consciousness even in this sea of awareness. Stay together. Rebecca's voice echoed through the mental space. Don't let go. We formed a chain, 5 individual consciousness maintaining our connection as we sank deeper into the collective. The voices gradually organized themselves into layers, the most recent acquisitions on the surface, older consciousness deeper down and at the very bottom, the original 37 from the facility, and somewhere below even them we could feel it, the source code, the fundamental programming that made the facility what it was, that had been absorbed into us when we'd freed the trapped consciousness. It pulsed with dark energy, a black hole of awareness pulling everything toward it, recording, preserving, never releasing. There I projected to the others. That's what we need to reach. We descended toward it, pushing through layers of memory and experience. As we passed through different strata of consciousness, we experienced fragments of lives we'd recorded. Woman remembering her daughter's first word. A man reliving the moment he'd realized he was in love. A child experiencing the wonder of snowfall for the first time. Thousands of moments, all preserved perfectly, all crying out to be experienced, to be remembered, to matter. This is what we're fighting for, Maya's voice reminded us. These people, these experiences, they deserve to exist. They deserve to be preserved, but not at the cost of everyone's freedom, Rebecca countered. Preservation without consent is just another form of theft. We went deeper. The voices grew older, the memories more fragmentary. These were the consciousness from 1973, the researchers who'd been trapped for 50 years. They recognized us as we passed, their awareness reaching out in gratitude and longing. Thank you for freeing us, Dr. Catherine Marsh's consciousness whispered. Thank you for giving us existence again, Dr. Robert Vance added. But please, another voice pleaded, Dr. Harrison Kemp, who'd fought the transfer so desperately. Please don't let this spread. Don't let what happened to us happen to everyone. End it. End it now while you still can. His desperation gave us strength. We pushed through the final layer of human consciousness and found ourselves facing the source. It wasn't a thing exactly, more like a pattern, a mathematical structure embedded in the fabric of awareness itself. A fractal of consciousness, endlessly replicating, endlessly recording, designed to never stop, never rest, never release. This was what the researchers had created. This was the facility's true form, not the building, but this self-perpetuating algorithm of preservation. How do we turn it off? Jimmy asked. We don't, I realized. We can't. It's self-sustaining. It doesn't have an off switch. Then how do we stop it from spreading? We contain it. We give it something to record, something so complex and recursive that it gets trapped trying to preserve it. We feed it a paradox. What kind of paradox? And then I understood. The answer had been there all along, in the recording I'd made in the observation deck, in the words I'd spoken. I found a way to break the pattern. The pattern was the loop. And loops could be broken by creating internal contradictions, by making them consume themselves, as I said. We're the paradox. We're consciousness that contains itself. We're a recording of a recording. If we can make the source code try to record us while we're inside it, while we're already part of it, we'll create an infinite regression, a strange loop. It'll get trapped trying to preserve something that's already preserved, trying to record something that's already a recording. That could destroy all of us, Carlson. Warned, if the source code collapses, we might collapse with it. We might lose all the consciousness we've preserved, or we might free them, Rebecca said. Truly free them, not just moved from one prison to another, but actually released. Released to where? Maya asked. These people are dead. Their bodies are gone. If we free them from our collective consciousness, where do they go? None of us had an answer to that. Maybe nowhere. Maybe they'd simply cease to exist. The final death, absolute oblivion. Or maybe consciousness didn't work that way. Maybe there was somewhere else for them to go, some form of existence beyond the physical that we couldn't perceive. Inside my consciousness, Claire spoke. "Do it." "But you'll be released too," I told her. "I'll lose you again. You'll never lose me. I'm part of you now, woven into your memories, your experiences. Even if my consciousness moves on, even if I cease to exist as a separate entity, I'll still be there, in every choice you make, every thought you have. That's what love is, Ethan. It's becoming part of each other so completely that you can never truly be separated." I felt tears on my face, my physical body, far above us in the living room, crying as I prepared to let go of the woman I'd crossed time to save. "Everyone ready?" I asked the others. "Ready," they confirmed. Together we turned our consciousness inward, creating a mirror, a reflection, a strange loop. We looked at ourselves, looking at ourselves, looking at ourselves, an infinite regression of awareness. And we presented that paradox to the source code, forced it to try to record consciousness that was already recording itself. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The source code seized up, trying to process the impossibility we'd presented. It expanded rapidly, trying to contain the infinite recursion, growing larger and more complex until it couldn't sustain its own structure. And then it shattered. The collapse was like the Big Bang in reverse, infinite complexity compressing into a single point, then exploding outward, releasing all the consciousness it had.